Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back today at 6:50 in the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And the Russian forces are getting tricked because they're dumb. Welcome back.
And the Russians are getting bamboozled, absolutely, beat to death nearly, but
Gobsmacked.
gobsmacked, probably a better way to put it than saying beat to death, but nevertheless, we are going to be putting the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine out there to all of y'all over these next 2 to 3 hours or so, and we've got a lot of it. A massive amount. And I just want to say really quickly that for some reason, tonight seems like a very special night to me, probably because I just came back from doing an exam at law school and literally started working on this as soon as I got home. I'm mentally fried right now. We are going to be getting through this news, though, tonight, and I have to say that after coming back from that exam, for some reason, it is making me cherish all of y'all tonight more so than I do on normal nights. I gotta thank all of y'all for always being here with us and sticking with us as we continue to cover the news of the war, whether it be good news, bad news, or anywhere in between. I'm just incredibly happy to know that we are able to get out the news to all of y'all, and also all of y'all are always here with us. It means a great deal to us. We rarely ever say that at the beginning of the streams, but I just want to thank y'all all once again for always being here with us and always making sure to help out our fundraisers and our efforts in making sure that Ukraine is taken care of. One of our legends, actually, as a matter of fact, this is news in itself. We don't have a bulletin on it, but one of our legends, BC Skyman, is actually in Ukraine right now, helping to get actual physical aid to Ukrainian soldiers and other groups in the area of Kherson. It's incredible.
Very cool.
It's
Very cool.
incredible to know that one of our own is over there right now helping out, and a lot of y'all have been. We haven't been able to mention each and every one of y'all, but considering that BC Skyman is in the chat right now, and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, local time where he is, I gotta say that it is just incredible to know that one of ours is over there in the Lee Spring Army, and that not only that, he told all of the Ukrainians he was able to deal with, from what we know, about what all of y'all have done to support Ukraine through all of the fundraisers. And I gotta say, thank you, BC Skyman, for spreading the word of what the Lee Spring Army has been doing to the Ukrainian people, and also, on top of that, thank you for giving a massive shout out to the 157,000 strong Lee Spring Army. They'll live forever through memory, and hopefully through the Ukrainian people. And so with that, now with all
Indeed. And also, I gotta say as well, I'm super happy to be here as well tonight also, because after you get done staring at a big-ass exam and you're done with it and it's finally done and you think you did okay on it, I gotta say, it's better than ever to see the LSA, so it's good to do the stream, I gotta say. Even though my brain's tired and stuff like that, for some reason I feel like I'm, like, floating on that for some reason. But anyways, Enforcer, what do we have?
What we have is a lot of news to cover. And also, really quickly, everyone, I want to tell y'all that we will be covering the partygoers and the homesteaders. I know that everyone's like, why the hell are you picking these names for what we know is going on over there? To quickly explain why, we've been having issues, and many people on YouTube have been having issues with certain words being mentioned on stream that end up getting them censored. We, of course, want to make sure to get the news out to y'all as best as we can, and we are going to be unrelenting in that goal. And so, while we want to make sure that y'all get this news, we also want to make sure that we don't end up getting kneecapped by YouTube because of it. And so, in response to what YouTube's doing, we are now going to be using, names for the certain groups that are over there, so that way we can make sure to avoid these censors, but also at the same time, make sure to get the news to all of y'all about what's going on over there. And so we will be covering that later tonight after our Ukraine war news segment. But we have a lot to cover in Ukraine, and we're going to be moving to where the Russians got trapped, smacked, and beaten back, which is in the northern area of Avdiivka. Over the past 24 to 48 hours, Russian forces were able to make it across the railroad berm at Stepove and take about half of a field in the area. From what we understand, Ukrainian forces had actually set up this advance for the Russians, although small, as an actual trap. It was pretty much devised as a trap by Ukrainian defenders from the outset. Once the Russians moved across, they found themselves on the other side of the railroad berm without any kind of elevation features to provide them cover, and this field, right here, ended up becoming a killing ground for hundreds of Russian soldiers that ended up coming across. From what we understand, a decent amount of tanks and armored personnel carriers, along with several hundred Russian soldiers, ended up being taken out of the battle today. When I say several hundred Russian soldiers, I don't mean all of them were put to sleep. I mean that some of them were put to sleep, and most of them received wounds that were so severe they will never be returning back into Ukraine. They'll be going home for the rest of the war. But it's something very important to note, because it appears that the Ukrainians are starting to enter a phase of active defense. And active defense is a little bit different than a defensive or a straight-on offensive operation. An active defense is one where the force, like the Ukrainian army, lies in wait and defends the area, but whenever an opportunity arises for a possible advance forward against the Russians, they will conduct small, pretty much micro-offensives wherever that may be possible. And we did hear about one that occurred near the area of Stepove today, after the Russians got wiped out in this field. From what we understand, the Ukrainians closed the ground, took almost the majority of the field again, and then closed it off for the Russians, leaving them on the other side of the railroad berm again. It's fairly good news, and we didn't get exact clips showing what happened, at least in that field, but we did get clips of Bradleys, M2 Bradleys, operating in the fields near Stepove, and they may be connected to that killing field that happened up there near Stepove today. And so here's our first clip. This one's actually of a Bradley that was firing at the Russians. This video came out from the Russians themselves, and it appears that Bradley got hit by some kind of an ATGM and shrugged it off. So here's the clip. When you see the Bradley moving forward and firing, we can see it firing its 25mm Bushmaster. We can see it firing at a somewhat slower pace. It looks like the gunner may actually be firing each shot deliberately, instead of just pushing down on the pedal and just firing everything in auto. And we can also see some Ukrainian infantry here moving back from this house, trying to reposition, most likely in the firefight. We now see the Bradley kind of moving around a little bit, moving forward and then backwards, most likely to try and make it just slightly more difficult for an ATGM to be able to guide itself right onto the Bradley. And look at that. That's actually, I have to say this, seems like a small thing for the Bradley to move backwards and forwards at a very slow speed over a small area. But what that is showing is that there is a deliberate amount of actions being taken by the driver to try and make it more difficult for the Bradley to get hit by an ATGM, which shows that they have been trained a pretty decent amount to have a tactic like this up their sleeve. When you see the Bradley continuing to fire, and this time they're laying down on the pedal, and also some people are thinking, why are you talking about pedal? What do you mean? Matthew, did you know that to fire a tank's or an APC's main gun, there usually isn't like a trigger on a rifle? You push down on a pedal on the floor.
That's kind of wild. So if you're wanting to like accelerate, you might actually end up killing someone instead.
No, you wouldn't do that, because the gunner's in a completely different place than the driver.
Oh, maybe so, maybe so. Well, I was thinking though, you might have some plausible deniability if you saw a Russian out front. You're like, oh, I want to accelerate the bleed, and then you step on the pedal and go, oh dear, he went down.
Man, no, I'd be stepping on the pedal instead of going boom, boom, boom. I'm going. But anyways, we can see the.
I don't know what kind of gun does that, but okay.
And also, we can see the Bradley. It looks like it got hit right there by the ATGM, and the drone is about to zoom in here. And from what can be seen, it looks like the ATGM hit may have been a grazing one, because the Bradley is leaving the area. It appears that the turret isn't moving much. Maybe the turret is stuck in place. But we can see the Bradley now beginning to move out of the area, trying to deal with the muddy slush that's in the area of Avdiivka at the moment. But it appears that the Bradley did survive the hit, which is pretty shocking. We believe that the ATGM that hit this Bradley was either a Concours or, I can't actually say it, but it looks a lot like it's spelled like, well, actually, I'll just tell you what it's spelled. Fagot. I'm not kidding. That's what the name of the ATGM is. We're going to call that Fago, like the drink, because I can't say the other one on YouTube for obvious reasons. But it was either a Concours or a Fago. We mostly believe it's a Concours. The Fago is an older system that appears to be mostly getting phased out at this point. So it was most likely a Concours that hit. It seems as though it may have been a superficial grazing of the turret, because we can see that there was no explosive force powerful enough that actually destroyed a part of the turret. The Bradley's armor, even with the broad armor additions that we can see here on the video, are still quite thin, and if an ATGM was to directly hit the turret, dead on a turret cheek, like say the right one that we're seeing on camera, it most likely would split the turret wide open on that side just from the explosive force. But we're not seeing that. That may suggest that the ATGM skimmed off the side of the Bradley, or the turret, and ended up not actually puncturing the compartment or the turret. However, we do notice that the turret isn't moving, and that may suggest that while the ATGM didn't punch through the turret or into the Bradley itself, either knocking out the turret or destroying the APC, that may suggest that the sheer fact that the ATGM even skimmed the turret may have concussed the gunner and left him unconscious, leaving the turret no longer movable. And we now see once again the Bradley getting out of there, but a very interesting sight to see that a Bradley took a ATGM to the face pretty much and ended up surviving. It's a very rare occurrence to see that sort of thing, and it's pretty impressive just as a matter of fact. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see something else that was a little wild. Some of y'all may remember this group from a while ago, back when the Russian border incursions were happening by the Freedom of Russia Legion and the Russian Volunteer Corps, and it appears that the Russian Volunteer Corps has been moved from border raids to Avdiivka, and specifically inside of the Avdiivka coke plant, one of the primary areas of defense for the northern part of Avdiivka, and stopping the major Russian advance that would most likely cut off most Ukrainian forces inside of Avdiivka from any kind of supplies coming in and keeping the defending forces going. This was a very interesting clip because, as many of y'all know, the RDK is a little bit of a controversial group. I'm not going to get into why because it's a purely political affair, but people have had a lot of questions as to whether the RDK is a good group or a bad group, and a lot of people have said if they're pro-Ukraine, that's fine by them. That's a pretty logical statement to make at this point in the war. But here's the clip that was published by the RDK today in the area of the coke plant. I'm going to have to be muting it. We can see the slag heap over here. And by the way, let me put this into focus for everyone. There's the slag heap, and let me go to Google Maps. And right down here are the very, very far outskirts of Avdiivka in the north. These are abandoned, actually. No one lives there. And then right up there is Krasnoarivka on the other side of the slag heap. The Russian offensive started here, where this blue lake is. They've made it to the railroad berm. And if we measure that, that means that they've traveled just about a mile, a little over a mile, in the course of, I say, about 3 to 4 months at this point. They've made about a mile in 3 to 4 months. That means that the Russian offensive, up until the point where they made it to the railroad berm, is advancing at a speed of less than a quarter of a mile per month at this rate. So you can get an idea, they're not really getting a lot for the kind of losses that they're getting. And when you can see that a drone can literally look at the very beginning of where the Russian offensive started and where the Russian offensive technically is right now, it's kind of a little lame to see that the Russians have lost over 3 to 4 months, probably at least 10,000 dead just in this 1 mile alone, and they don't really have a lot to show for it. Once he says on the radio, fire negative, you stop firing. Wait for command, basically. And we can see them loading into the back of a Bradley. Oh, they've given them upgrades. Since they've gotten upgrades, man, they're no longer in the Humvees. They got Bradleys now.
They're living that Gucci lifestyle now.
Sit with me.
Okay.
Sit your way. But that's anyways. And there goes their Bradleys. We hear them giving the order to stop. And it looks like the Bradleys are now coming to a stop so the infantry can dismount. And we can see that the RDK is right along the railroad berm on the northern side of the coke plant. Whenever I say a coke plant, just remember, everyone, Pablo Escobar is getting another breath at life. But we can see now some kind of night vision footage. It appears that they are conducting this assault either at the break of dawn or dusk. And we now see them advancing into the tree line along the railroad berm with fire support from the Bradleys.
You know, curious question real quick. I heard you mention something about orders a second ago. Does Ukraine have a similar structure to the way the U.S. military works, where you have to get permission for every single engagement you have, or are they more lax about that, like they give discretion to the units?
I think they most likely give discretion to the units in these instances, because whenever we heard about the US units having to get approval from pretty much the very top of the command chain to be able to fire back, that usually was in places like Iraq or Afghanistan, where the rules of engagement were very strict because, of course, fighting terrorists is very hard to distinguish the terrorists from the civilians. So usually you had to go all the way up the chain of command to make sure that no possible war crimes were going to be committed. That's probably not the case in Ukraine, because unlike Afghanistan, the Russians are clearly uniformed and also all over the place, so it would probably be way too cumbersome for every single company of every single battalion to call all the way up to the general of their army corps to request for permission to fire back. So there's probably a lot more lax in places like Ukraine.
Yeah, it would seem a little bit tough to have to wait that long to engage in such a dynamic fight like this one. But like JB said, they have to wait for an order.
Have you ever wanted to find yourself an order from the Russian Volunteer Corps? Look at how they spell that down there. It's Ruski. That says Ruski right there at the top. Dobrolchiki Korls, I believe. And we can hear one of them saying that they're wounded. And we can hear that they're now getting evacuated. We can see on the thermal imaging system here, the Bradley retreating while providing fire, and we can see the infantry laid out along the railroad berm. We can also see some Russian artillery coming in at the far back of the screen, probably the reason why the Bradley is retreating from the area. The Bradley is quite vulnerable to artillery fire if the shots landed well. We hear the commander continuing to give the order for the infantry to fire. And from what we could tell on the thermals, it was actually a smaller group, maybe about a fire team in size of about 4 to 5 guys. Not many more than that, but we can see that the Russians are bringing down artillery on top of them, trying to suppress them so that way they'll pull off their attack. But it appears that that's not working because the artillery is not that accurate. When you see the infantry continuing to lay down fire, and it looks like this attack was actually conducted at dusk, more so than dawn, because it looks like it's turning on into night as they keep going. But we can now see the SL giving the order to advance, and we can now see in this clip, this appears to be about a full-sized squad. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 guys, that's about the size of a squad. And each squad, I believe, has 3 fire teams made up of 4 guys. So that would equal an entire squad. 3 fire teams, 4 guys in each fire team, 12 guys, that's a squad. So it appears to be a smaller probing assault by the RDK. It's not a large company-wide action or anything like that, and it looks like they may just be trying to gather information about what kind of Russian forces lie on the other side of the railroad berm, and how well-trained they are or how effective they may be in a defense. So we can see some of these Russian soldiers right here in the tree line as the RDK begins to snake their way down the other side of the railroad berm with about 2 fire teams to try and take out these Russian forces. We can now see the RDK forces have closed into incredibly close range fighting. It appears to be about 30 yards or less. And we can see that the Russians continue to bring down artillery fire, trying to suppress the RDK before they're possibly able to wipe out the infantry squads they have on that side of the railroad berm. We can now see 4 Russians, what would be a Western form of a fire team, leaving one of their trenches and trying to move. It appears that one of them has just gone to sleep, the other one is crawling around, and 2 of them are still trying to move out, but there's absolutely no spacing. We can now see that 2 more Bradleys have pulled up in the middle of the firefight and have now deposited an entire second squad onto the battlefield to support the first initial squad as they are now clearing out the tree line just to the left and off screen. And we see the Bradleys providing fire support as they scoot out of the area, leaving the infantry to make their way across the railroad berm and join the first squad, which is already conducting the assault. It appears that some kind of an artillery shell, let me go back and check the caption on that. It appears that a Ukrainian artillery shell was called in for some incredibly close support, just about 50 yards away, and landed right on top of the Russian trench, most likely knocking out a couple of the Russians before the RDK had to re-engage them with small arms. We can now see that according to the captions, one of the RDK soldiers has unfortunately died in the firefight, and it appears that the Bradley is coming in to evacuate the wounded as a Russian artillery shell practically lands right on top of the squad, and the Bradley's now forced to try and move out of the area, and they'll have to move the wounded closer to the Bradley so that way he doesn't get hit by the next possible incoming shell. It looks as though casualties were most likely minimal. We only saw one of them specifically being mentioned here in the video, and it looks like that last artillery strike brought in by the Russians may have wounded an additional 2 or maybe killed another additional RDK soldier. But nevertheless, it is a pretty decent assault that they were able to conduct with just 2 squads alone. Out of the 24 guys that they dedicated to this battle, they most likely came out with around 2 wounded and 1 dead, compared to the Russians' nearly entire squad that was wiped out. This, of course, is marginalizing the, deaths of the RDK and Russian soldiers, but in a war like this, it's very important to always break down in a very weird way, the return on investment that you get out of your soldiers engaging in a fight versus what the other ones lose. And from what we can see, the kill-to-death ratio in this one engagement appears to have been somewhere around 1 to 8, 1 to 7 most likely, and we're not including the wounded in that figure. The wounded are just not being accounted for in that. But that is a pretty decent return on investment, and it's also showing that the RDK is a pretty well-trained unit, although being an ad hoc one, and from what we understand, being only a few hundred in size, most likely about a half battalion in strength. They're still doing incredibly well, and they're able to hold their own even in these small engagements on the massive battlefield of Avdiivka, where hundreds of Russian soldiers are losing their lives each and every day. They did incredibly good, and hopefully we'll get to see that the RDK is able to keep mitigating their casualties, but also ensure that the Russians near the Avdiivka coke plant continue to sustain incredibly high losses. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see a bit of a day in the life of a battle around this area of the field. Avdiivka, Donetsk Oblast. Can y'all believe I was able to
very
read?
beautiful out here, actually, for it to be a war zone.
It's gorgeous, and it's always so weird because think about it, Matthew. It looked just like this 100 years ago in France in World War I. The same kind of battles, the same amount of ground being taken, and it was this picturesque then. And it's so weird to think that war doesn't change the landscapes that these people are fighting in. They're still as picturesque and beautiful as they were before the war, but now some of the most horrendous things imaginable are happening in the middle of those fields.
It's a real shame. And the guys on the ground don't even get to enjoy it because they're too busy fighting.
Yeah, it's really a shame, but it's nevertheless, the Ukrainians are doing a beautiful job, much like the beautiful fields they're fighting in, of defending against these Russian pushes in the Krasnoyarivka area. We see them getting some shots of the Ukrainians. What the hell was that? Hold up, everyone. What is that? That looks... I can't even tell y'all. I swore it almost looked like an FAL or a FAL at the beginning, but now I can't tell because it has a bolt, or at least a charging handle right here. Look at that. That's weird. I don't know what rifle that is. But we can see them continuing to hit Russian vehicles in the area. This is mostly a montage of probably 3 days of fighting in the Krasnoyarivka area, filmed by the 47th Magura, but still absolutely wonderful to see that the Ukrainians were able to inflict high losses once more, and a decent amount of vehicles were just lost over the past few days. Another thing that we've noticed about this area of the battlefield, specifically around the Krasnoyarivka flank of Avdiivka, is that a lot of elite Ukrainian units are being moved into this area. And when I say elite, I mean forces like, from what we understand, possibly the Freedom of Russia Legion, although we haven't really heard a lot about them in this area. We have seen the RDK moved in. We've also seen the 47th Magura, along with a couple of other units. And specifically, the 47th Magura is a very interesting one to see in this area because they have they're mostly a brigade made up entirely of modern equipment like Bradleys and Leopards, which give them an additional fighting edge against the Russians. And it appears that the Ukrainians are trying to emphasize the quality over quantity approach to their defense in this area. Instead of just putting a mass of their soldiers against a mass of the Russians, they'd rather put a smaller amount of incredibly high-end units in this area to defend against the incredibly large numbers of low-quality troops that the Russians are trying to push into the coke plant. However, while the equipment in this area is pretty high-end, and the 47 Magura has been doing a great job, every once in a while, a Bradley does get hit a little too hard, and they have to be brought back behind the lines for repairs to get back into action. But you can see that one Bradley, most likely from the 47 Magura, appears to have lost a track and maybe suffered additional damage. We can see that most of the brought armor is still intact on the front glacis, and looking into the back, we can see that there's a little bit of additional damage to the left side of the APC, and we can also see that the inside has been dirtied a little bit. We don't know if it was dirty before or after the strike, but nevertheless, we can see that they're towing this away to get further repairs and then be sent back onto the line to be used by the Magura, most likely again. That's one great thing about Western Armored Personnel Carriers, is that due to the ammunition being stored in a rather safe and efficient way, the vehicles usually don't burn up when hit. Usually the hits are actually repairable, and the vehicle can be returned to the front lines, usually with the same crew that brought them there. And so hopefully we'll get to see that that's the case with this Bradley, and he'll be able to rejoin the defensive and continue to keep the Russians at bay. Moving on from that, inside of Avdiivka, we just had a really bizarre clip today. Apparently they were evacuating more horses from Avdiivka. You would think they were busy enough, but apparently they are not busy enough because they had time to evacuate the horses. So here's the clip. And we hear the music. Oh, that music. That beautiful, beautiful music. Why'd he stop playing that beautiful music? But we can see the horses making their way down the road as they're getting them out of there. And I gotta say, it's wild to think that the Ukrainians really do try and save as much life as they can. Even just horses, they even give an attempt to try and get them out of danger.
It's something you don't see the Russians doing, for sure.
It's certainly something you don't see the Russians doing. You'd be hard-pressed to find it. But we can see that they're giving a little bit of information about the organization that conducted this, and also how they herded them out of the city. We saw like a 30-second clip of these horses being evacuated about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, but we never got the full clips of everything that happened from the stables where they found the horses to when they got them out. And we see these horses just grazing in the middle of a war zone. Just chilling. You know, they're just doing their thing. They vibing. Have you ever seen a horse vibing out there in a normal day? Have you? Have you ever seen a horse vibing in the middle of a war zone? Neither have I. Introducing the all-new Mustang. The only horse of its kind that's going to sit there and chew on grass in the middle of you kicking the Russians' ass. It's absolutely incredible to watch these wild and majestic creatures in the middle of a war zone near such a majestic and mighty army such as the Ukrainians. Guts.
They even have a Mustang Dark Horse.
Dude, don't let the 47 Magura get a hold of these things, because these horses, after the Magura gets a hold of them, they're going to be going it's like their symbol.
Man, some vicious horses out here, man.
And we see them showing more of Avdiivka, a lot of the Ukrainian flags that are flying from all of the units that are inside the city.
They keep showing this very warm horse with a very comfortable blanket.
Man, that horse is chilling right there, man. It's like, heat. And it looks like their end destination from Avdiivka is going to be up in the city of Kharkiv. Our car couldn't pull. Selfish 1.5 ton horses. Now, why are they selfish? Like, why are the horses selfish? Why throw heat at them? And now we can see that they made it to Kharkiv. This was around about a week ago.
They're giving these horses the royal treatment. Like, there's like Russian soldiers that would love to be treated like this horse.
Man, dude, honestly, that's true. These horses get better treatment than even like Russian colonels do. Dude, did you see that? What the hell was that dog doing? What the dog doing? Look at it. Watch, look, the horse is getting out. And in the background, you're going to see... that dog just
I was chasing
by.
after some ball or something, I think. Or maybe some artillery. And they kind of schmott, for real. They just know exactly where to go. It's like, okay, right in here. Okay.
Man, look at that.
Horses seem like such gentle, like intelligent creatures, but just very docile or docile.
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 Man, I'm going to create a weapon system called the XM91 Docile. That's it. It's going to be an
The
anti-radar.
docile and mosile.
The missile
A
knows
good
where it
storybook
is
for children.
because it knows where it isn't. But we can see here them just showing off where the horses are. Very nice to see that they took some time to evacuate them out of the area. But moving on into our next clip, we also got to see a little bit of some MLRS hits that the Ukrainians were conducting on the southern end of Avdiivka. From what we could tell, this was near the highway. I'm going to be muting that, but we can see the MLRS fire coming on in, just blanketing the general area. This isn't a HIMARS. From what we understand, it's most likely a grad that the Ukrainians are using to hit this area. And we can now see the smoke rising. We can't really see if any Russian forces were directly hit in that attack, either a vehicle or anything similar, because we're not seeing anything brewing up. It may have been hitting infantry, but it's really hard to tell because we haven't gotten in close enough to see. And with that, that's the end of that clip. Pretty interesting to see, and with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little MLRS strike on the southern end of Avdiivka and on into the area of Pisky, where we got to see some more Russian soldiers getting hit by the 129th TDF. Oh. And we see the Russians doing their thing. Okay, everyone, run into the tree line, no spacing whatsoever. And the first round hits. Dude, look at these guys. Like, the RDK had organization, you know. These guys just run into the tree line in, like, a cackle. Like, they don't even have, like, an actual squad formation. They're all just blending in with each other at this point. That is just mass confusion right there. Look at that. That lack of organization is going to get people schmacked here in a minute. And y'all are about to see the cluster bombs start landing. Oh, it's hell for them now. They probably don't even know who their SL is, what they're doing, why they're doing it. Or anything for that matter. I don't think they've ever really known that throughout the whole war anyways, but they're really not knowing it right now. And just look at them. The Ukrainians are laying salt and pepper on these guys like it's a woman who drinks pumpkin spice as she's getting ready for Thanksgiving. It's a lot of salt and pepper. And we can just see them just slamming it down over and over. And we can also see what appears to be a little cook-off happening.
Man, the Ukrainians are eventually going to have to upgrade from salt and pepper to like Old Bay or something, or some Zatarains or some spice.
Dude, I tell you, put some Old Bay on them, they're gone. That's it. Get some people from Maryland over there, sprinkle some Old Bay on the Russians, they'd literally be nothing but bare bones in like 10 minutes. Well, that was a good joke, but anyways, we can see the artillery.
It was a good one. I gotta say, it was a good one.
Just a deafening silence after that one. I was like, damn. I was like, is that bad? But we can see the artillery fire continuing to hit the Russians in this tree line. And we now see a couple of Russians just walking around. They're just kind of meandering, you know? And the Ukrainians didn't like that. Meandering is no good excuse. They pepper them a little bit more.
Wait a minute, did you notice in that last clip the drone's battery was actually increasing and not decreasing? Did you see that?
No, I didn't. Which clip? Is it this one?
Go back about 10 seconds or so. Play it from right here.
And where's the battery at?
It's up top. It's that number that keeps ticking down. Watch it start ticking up in one of these clips in a second.
I think
Look at that.
I think it was just like a cut from one drone to the next. I don't think.
No, it was the same. It was the same image. They zoomed in on that drone. It kept like ticking up for a second.
No, I mean, like, that's a cut right there. You know, they cut to a whole other drone.
Ah, man, you're not seeing it. But it's that same, like, image right here. It was, like, ticking up for, like 3 or 4 seconds. Like, it's obviously sped up, but the drone was actually gaining power for a split second.
Unlimited power. They must be really close for this thing to be at 89%. Like, they must be like a half mile away from this position. And they're still hitting them with that cluster bomb. And we can see more Russians. This time they don't even have APCs. They're just walking their way down into the killing zone. And Man Machine said, "Send the orcs red hot chili peppers with the chili." Dude, that guy, like, I'm scared of that guy. And we see the Ukrainians grabbing the drone and walking it back. And that's the end of the clip. Luckily, OPSEC isn't violated there because they moved out of that position immediately afterwards. But great to see the 129th TDF doing some really good work in the area. We're now going to be moving on from that and into our location unknowns. Because I was able to find some really cool ones today. I know I say that every day, but I work really hard to try and find clips where we don't know where they come from, that at the same time, they're still very interesting and unique clips. And we have a decent amount of them. Starting off with our first one, showing some Ukrainian soldiers having fun. Because believe it or not, y'all, while they're in a war, they do like to have high morale. And that's why our channel is always so upbeat and so happy, because we know that there are some people over there in Ukraine, like BC Skyman right now. While he's not a soldier, it is always good to keep spirits high and look at the bright side of things, even though it is a war. And so we can see here, they're playing the remix, and we can see him pulling the sled.
There's the little children in the play yard, Bliat.
Man, look at them go. And the little
Hey, a
dog
wiener.
chasing him. Man, watch out. The Russians will look at that and they'll see dinner. They're going to see, like, some sausages. What type of dog is that?
It looked like a wiener dog at first, but it kind of looks like maybe a dachshund or something.
I thought a dachshund was a weenie dog.
I know, I couldn't come up with another species that was setting up a name for a weenie dog.
That looks like a dog. What kind? Oh, well, what kind of dog? It looks like a dog. It looks like a hound or something. But anyways,
So it looks like a dog. It looks like a canine. It looks like a creature.
yes, the aspen tree. We can tell it's an aspen because that's the way it is. Do you know that meme, Matthew?
I think so.
Oh man, I'm just hitting and missing, swinging and missing tonight. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see a Ukrainian soldier lovingly cleaning his machine gun. And I wish there were people in America that loved machine guns as much as this guy loves his. Watch him clean this thing. You'll know what I mean. He's got out the little cleaner. He's like, oh, we got to clean this thing up really nice. This guy's spraying it down like it's some kind of a fine dish at a French restaurant. Not even the cameraman's going to disrupt him from his cleaning duties. Look at him.
I wonder what that is, like degreaser, like all in one, or what? Because-
WD-40.
Oh no, that'd be big.
Dude, that takes it from him kindly caring for the gun to being an absolute murderer, a serial killer of machine guns if he's using WD-40.
You know, I've heard some of these guys just get like all-in-one degreaser, and they'll literally spray it down the barrel and spray it in the chamber, and that's all they do to it, and they just keep firing it over and over and over again. And it kind of keeps it clean, but not really. Like, it's not good for the longevity, but you know, they don't care. They're on the battlefield.
Man, I'll tell you, like with AKs, I think that would work. With other guns, I don't think that would work, especially with Western-made ones. I don't know if that would work for too long. But moving on from that clip and on into our next one, we also got to see some pretty undrivable conditions. And I got to tell y'all, what y'all are about to see, it's not rain, it's mud from the road. Here's the clip. I'm going to be muting that, but as they're driving along, the mud is so bad, it's almost like it's raining on the truck. They can't even see. Now, this is kind of driving where you can't be Tony. Tony! Man! And then they all flip over and break the necks. But this guy is...
That is one strong windshield wiper, by the way. That thing is like just scraping it off repeatedly. By now, like a regular windshield wiper would have been gunked up and probably destroyed. But this thing's just still going.
Man, God's toughest battles, this Rasputisa Road versus God's strongest soldier, the windshield wiper. Dude,
Yeah.
this thing is going for it. Look at it. Dude, that is an whoever made this wiper, they need to have this as their commercial now, because this is truly impressive.
And it's just one wiper blade, too. Like, very thin. Like, that thing must be made out of solid metal.
Dude, this thing is made out of that. What the hell is it? Like Zelenskyy or something like that. It's brand new material. This thing is
Zelenskyy.
This thing is going. Look at it. Nothing is stopping this windshield wiper. That is something. And look, it's just taking it.
I need power, not a blade.
He said, I don't need better conditions. I need a stronger wiper. But I gotta tell you, that is impressive. I mean, absolutely incredible. It's pushing like pounds of mud off of this windshield. And you gotta give credit where credit's due. Whoever made that windshield wiper deserves a raise. We're going to be moving on from that interesting clip and on into our next one, where we also got to see some Ukrainian soldiers surviving a direct drone attack to their vehicle. It's pretty wild to see. And without further ado, here's the clip. See them moving along. I can't really tell what kind of vehicle this is, but we see the truck get hit. You see them open the door.
Oh, damn, there's a guy out there?
Yeah. I mean, they hopped out.
Давай, сюда!
And everyone made it out somehow. That was just a miracle. But looks like one guy did get wounded. Regardless of whether the guy got wounded, though, that is a miracle. If you look at the front of this little van here, it was a flat-hooded van. So that drone, when it exploded, it pretty much exploded right in front of the driver from where we saw in the clip. And somehow, even though it hit right in front of the guy, he survived, and everyone in the vehicle did. Now, there's nothing really to attest to the quality or the structure of the vehicle. It has no armor. It's just a normal van. The only thing we can ascribe this to is just sheer luck that that drone ended up not taking out anyone inside of the van. But of course, that shows you the terror of being inside of one of these vehicles when a drone strikes them, and also a big call as to why armored vehicles like MRAPs and Max Pros are a lifesaver to Ukrainian forces out there on the battlefield. Because those vehicles provide them such a level of protection that a drone will never even be able to dent the armor on a Max Pro. But in vehicles like these, they can end up being quite dangerous. But still, great to see everyone was able to survive this one video. Moving on from that, we also got to see how Ukrainian soldiers are beginning to fix their artillery pieces in place, the towed artillery pieces, after the ground solidified and made it impossible for the artillery pieces to buffer the recoil. And here is the clip. My man whipped out the Husqvarna. And he's literally...
Is that what that is? Or a still?
Probably a still. You're probably right on that one. That's a still. Oh, damn.
Ah, fire.
Oh, I see what they're doing. They're burning the ground to soften it up. Genius. Genius. Still scares the hell out of me, but still genius. And now you see him taking out the axe and chopping. And he ain't getting far. But still... very nice to see. Interesting to know that the Ukrainians are always trying to improvise, adapt, and overcome, and hopefully they were able to do that in this instance. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of Location Unknown news and on into our last bit of Location Unknown news before we get on into the rest of the news on the front lines outside of Avdiivka. We've got the Russian casualty report. And the casualty report today is pretty spicy. Let's take a look. Ooh!
Oh my goodness, man. It's juicy like a tenderloin steak in every category. My goodness. 7 Bobcats in a day, all kinds of troop losses. Jeez, they've like hit every category except for subs.
Sheesh. I gotta tell you, today was a day of days. 7 Bobcat skid steers were wiped out. Of course, that's the number we always have to talk about first. But 1,030 more Russian soldiers have been taken out over the past 24 hours. A lot of these, from what we understand, are from the Avdiivka area. 15 armored personnel carriers were destroyed. From what we can tell, most of those were destroyed in the killing field in northern Avdiivka, just near the Avdiivka coke plant. Another 32 supply trucks were also destroyed, with a whopping 26 tanks knocked out in a single day. A truly amazing number, because of course it only takes 10 main battle tanks to supply an entire 800 Russians with a satisfactory amount of armor. That means that nearly, let me think of the number, it would be like 2,400 Russian soldiers are now completely without any tank support due to these losses. 26 artillery pieces were also destroyed as well, a very good number, once again showing the Ukrainian counter battery is getting hard at work again. We also saw that 15 drones were destroyed, along with one cruise missile being shot down, and a amazing 3 anti-aircraft systems being destroyed as well. Anti-aircraft systems are always destroyed in fairly low numbers. There's been 650 days of war so far, and out of all 650 days, there are only 605 anti-aircraft losses to show for it. And so anything larger than 1 anti-aircraft system being lost in a day, in that category is considered to be an incredibly high loss rate. And 3 anti-aircraft systems over the course of 1 day, that is truly amazing losses right there, and something that the Ukrainians have to be applauded on. They don't have any proper systems to actually destroy these with either. They don't really have any aircraft like the F-16s yet that can fire the AGM-88 HARM, where it's able to be blind fired and then find its target later, or where it can be fired and then it can find its target and the F-16 can guide it to it. They don't have any of that. All of these anti-aircraft warfare pieces are being destroyed by the utmost level of skill, and so to see 3 of them get destroyed, that is truly an incredible figure. But moving on from our loss figures, which is once again showing that the Russians are taking incredibly high losses, and that little trap that the Ukrainians laid in the northern area of Avdiivka was wildly successful over the past 24 hours, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news of the war, because there's a lot of it, and the war is not over. No, it's not over. We have so much to cover, all the way from the northern area of Kupiansk and all the way down to Kherson, y'all. But before we get on into this, there is something very interesting that we have to talk about. Matthew has been talking to all of y'all consistently throughout the show. And all of y'all have said very interesting things. Very, very interesting. We have been taking notes and putting down lists. And I have to say, Matthew, what do we have?
All right, so entering our first poll and question segment, we have our first poll question to address, which says, Zelensky's chief of staff says Ukraine could lose the war if aid gets delayed any longer, and what are your thoughts? 47% said the Ukraine situation is getting dire, 17% said, it's really not as bad as it seems, 20% said it's fear marketing for more aid, and 15% said unsure. And on this one, I must admit that one thing Ukraine has done for a while, and it's understandable, I'm not criticizing them for this, is they have made it seem like if aid isn't delivered tomorrow, then the war is going to be all over. But we know for a fact that Ukraine's been fighting the war very strongly, and they've been pushing the Russians back and holding them back consistently. So while I think it's not as serious as they're letting on, it is very important for the aid to go ahead and get to Ukraine. And also, Ukraine has to think ahead. They can't just simply wait for the aid to simply run out and then deal with it. They have to sort of plan ahead and start getting the ball rolling, or otherwise, if it comes down to it, they could start encountering some major issues if it doesn't actually arrive, which right now, it is being threatened in the U.S. It looks like it's sort of up in the air right now, and that's obviously not a good thing for Ukraine. But, Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it is interesting to hear that they are saying that the war is going to be lost if support stops. Of course, this is something that we aren't really covering much, and many of y'all have been hearing about the statements made by the U.S. government saying that support for Ukraine has run out. And I find that to be a very poor statement as far as the wisdom of the statement goes, and also the idea that this may become something permanent. The United States, as well as all of Europe and the NATO alliance, has a strategic interest inside of Ukraine. That's something that is being, seems to be forgotten, or really, to be honest with y'all, I'm going to be entirely honest with y'all, it's not being forgotten, and it's not deliberately being screwed over. It's the thing that the public has lost interest in the war, and nowadays it seems as though the atmosphere in the United States on all sides is that if the public doesn't care about it and it's not going to get me reelected, then I don't care, even if it is in America's interest to continue to support Ukraine. So we see that almost everybody in the United States is kind of giving, not everyone in the United States, but a lot of people in the U.S. government, even the people who are supposedly pro-Ukraine, are kind of giving a cold shoulder at this point because they don't think their potential voters are really caring about the war all that much anymore. That's what I'm starting to see. And I don't like the look of that, and I don't like the idea of it. I don't like the idea of the United States and its government completely being driven only by the fact that they want to do what's mainstream and what may get them votes in the next election. That seems to be a very poor way to run the United States. It's something that I'm just not really a big fan of. And also, I see someone say, not on all sides. Oh, yeah, I have. I've seen it on all sides. There is, of course, a faction in one particular category that is just staunchly anti-Ukraine, and we've all heard about them ever since the beginning of the war. They've been around since then. But I'm also starting to notice that a lot of those people who were pro-Ukrainian in the Congress are sitting there and they're not being as pro-Ukraine or as vehement as getting support out as they were before. That's where the problem lies. The amount of anti-Ukrainian congressional, congressmen has not increased. The amount of benevolent Congress members that used to be pro-Ukrainian has increased, and that's why we're seeing the support is starting to fall off. I don't really like that much. And I don't really like the fact that Ukraine is having to sit here and start putting out warning signals that the war could start going south very quickly because of these people who are looking to be reelected and don't really care about making sure that the U.S. is secure long term. That's not a way to run a country. That's not a way to represent the public's interests. And I would say that I certainly think that we need to see that support to Ukraine continues to flow, because while I don't think they're going to lose the war literally immediately if the support stops from the United States, that will drag out this war greatly and may end in a draw in between Ukraine and Russia, and that's not in our interests, especially if the Russians continue to hold Sevastopol and Crimea after this war is over. That's what my opinion would be, and I see some people disagreeing, and also I see Dale Alaticus, he brought up the perfect point. A lot of those senators that have been staunchly pro-Ukraine have moved on to the next big thing, and y'all all know what the next big thing is. It's this. And while we cover it on our channel, we have noticed that a lot of people have tried to move on to this completely and just completely move on from really mentioning anything. And I also see someone saying, whoa, lots of political posts. No, we do not allow politics. And I also see that people are starting to try and espouse their political beliefs. I'm not here to bash one party or the other. That's not what we do. I'm not here to bash one side or the other. That's not what we're here to do. If anything, I always try and bring up both sides and critique them equally, because they usually do the same things just in different veins. But I don't really like the idea of a lot of these Congress members seeing that the trendy thing went from being pro-Ukraine to, pro-homesteaders. They're now moving to that completely, and they're just dropping Ukraine because it's not the biggest, latest, and greatest thing. That's not going to benefit the United States. And on top of that is, the homesteaders already have everything under control. Everything's fine down there, and they're doing fine on their own. So I would say that it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think that we need to make sure the support to Ukraine does continue, but I would also have to say that the statements by some of the Ukrainian top brass seems a little bit more alarmist than actual fact. They aren't going to lose the war immediately if support stops, but it will drag out the war probably for years, or whenever the Russian economy collapses, which, depending on Ukrainian support for Ukraine, who knows when that will be. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, I have to say really quickly, see a lot of people getting into some very political discussions in the chat. And I've got to be honest with y'all, this is why we are very apprehensive about talking anything about America at all, is that domestic politics here in the States is a very divisive thing, and it starts to detract support from Ukraine. That's something that we've seen a lot and a great deal. And I would hope that people understand we're not here, and I'm not here, to try and say that one side is greater or one side is worse than the other. I don't care what side you're on, and I don't care what you think about anything going on in America. What I care about is helping out the people in Ukraine. Everything else can wait for when this is over. What I'm concerned about is making sure that support for Ukraine can continue. And so I hope that everyone agrees with that, and everyone makes sure to keep their political biases aside, because we're not here to talk about who's going to win the next election. We're not here for any of that. We're here to talk about how in the world do we support American interest, how in the world do we support Ukraine, and how in the world do we make sure that both of those are achieved at the end of this year or at the end of this war. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll question says, some U.S. analysts blame Zelensky's wide offensive strategy for a lack of a major advance on the Ukrainian front line, and what are your thoughts? 32% said that's not the reason, 24% said, it's partly the reason, another 24% said that's likely the reason, and 20% said unsure. And on this one, I have to say, I'm not of the belief that we should start bashing Zelensky simply because the war hasn't gone exactly the way that some people wanted it to go. Hindsight is always 20/20, And now we kind of see that the wide offensive strategy really did not work the way it sort of was planned to work. And if you recall, the U.S. was telling Zelenskyy to target one specific area with most of his forces, try to bust through the front line in that spot, and then go from there. But Zelenskyy decided, well, that's really not working for our troops, so we're going to sort of back off the U.S. suggestion and go back to our traditional fighting methods. And it ended up not being the best choice. But at the same time, like I said, I'm not of the belief to bash Zelenskyy for it. He made a tactical decision at the time that he believed was right based on his experience and what he believed worked for his troops. And, you know, once again, not going to bash him. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say, the U.S. assessment that the Ukrainians need to pick one front was the correct assessment at the time. The Ukrainians, and this is hindsight, of course, back when the statement was made that U.S. strategy didn't work for Ukraine and they were going to go back to what they normally do under their own doctrine, we actually sided with the Ukrainians. We said they probably know what's best for themselves. And at the time, it appeared that that was the case. It didn't seem that the U.S. doctrine of one front, one breakthrough with high-end equipment near the area of Robotne was really amounting to much. And so the Ukrainians started to dedicate efforts elsewhere. Looking back at that now, it seems as though that may have actually been a bad choice. I'm not going to say that he needs to be removed for that, because that was kind of a learning lesson for everyone. No one saw that coming. And on top of that, on our end, we were also saying that the Ukrainians probably do know what's best, and now they've lived and learned. And next year, when we move into that, which is just a few weeks away, they'll probably take those lessons and start to work with them again and try and figure out a new strategy. But I think that the U.S. was correct in saying that a one punch, one breakthrough kind of offensive would have worked the best. If Ukraine could have just made it to Melitopol, or even Tokmak for that matter, they would have been able to make a pretty decent success of the entire conflict, and probably would have been able to screw over the Russian forces in Kherson and Crimea fairly effectively, including a strike that would have knocked out the Kerch Bridge. We didn't see that, though, and looking back at that, that probably would have been the best thing for them to do. Of course, the Zaporizhia front, the Robotne area, is a very difficult area to fight through, and we don't even know that if they dedicated all of their equipment and resources like America wanted to, would they have been able to make a breakthrough then? We don't really know. There's still a lot of questionability to that being the case, but nevertheless...
Well, one thing I was just thinking is I'm sure this played a part in it. I see some people saying, well, it's not necessarily bashing Zelenskyy to hold him accountable. I'm not saying don't hold him accountable, but at the same time, I'm not saying to go in and bash him to say he's a stupid general, he's a stupid commander, because that would be unfair. Maybe his troops were not prepared to do a complete push the way the United States was wanting them to do it, perhaps. Maybe they weren't prepared for that at the time because they didn't have all the equipment, etc. Zelenskyy knew what was actually happening on the ground, and maybe he made a subjective decision to do what he did because he felt that'd be better. But at the same time, we have to realize that America was correct. America isn't the strongest power in the world for no reason. We do have good strategies, and we have made blunders ourselves. But, just from a common sense perspective, to me, it seemed like a very bad idea to spread your forces out so thin amongst such a wide frontline area, because obviously that's going to create power issues, and also the ability to break through is going to be much less reduced because of that. And, it didn't seem like a wise choice at the time, and I criticized it actually at the time. And now it turns out that our criticisms were actually accurate. But unfortunately, what were you about to say?
Really, that's almost what I said. I would agree with that completely, because America isn't number one in the world for nothing. That is correct. And I know a lot of people are about to be like, oh, but that's true. I mean, we do have the largest military in the world. We spend hundreds of we almost spend, I believe, $1 trillion on it at this point annually. So going off of that, it would make pretty good sense that we would know what we're talking about at least a little bit. Otherwise, where's all the money going? And it looks as though we may have done some wargaming. And when I say wargaming, it's not like, World of Tanks or anything. It's an actual complex kind of a simulation that we conduct usually on computers these days. Back in the day, it was in these giant stadium-like buildings with massive maps on the floor, and they would move around units, try and realistically account for things. Possibly we could have done some sort of wargaming and found out that the best Ukrainian strategy would have been a one-front offensive, just trying to punch straight through. And historically, even in historical precedents, that's usually what works the best. It's very rare that we see multi-front offensives work. One of the few times we saw that was with the Germans in World War II invading Poland. They actually conducted a multi-front offensive, and it ended up being wildly successful, to the point that many people, many strategists around the world, were completely blown away at the main newspaper statements that pushes from, let me see, what was it? Königsberg, which is now Kaliningrad. Königsberg, straight to Danzig, also right into the heart of Poland, and also through, let me see, what's the name? The Carpathian mountain range in southern Poland, all went off without a hitch and were wildly successful, and were all commanded with pretty good precision, at least what was said publicly. And that was so impressive to so many people around the world that when Stalin tried to conduct the Winter War of 1939 in the invasion of Finland, instead of going with, I believe it was the Foreign Secretary Molotov's plan of a single front offensive from the area around St. Petersburg directly towards Helsinki, Stalin rejected the idea and said we have to do something as complex and as amazing as the Germans, because if they could make it possible, we have to do this as a pissing contest. We have to have a multi-front offensive throughout the entire border of Finland to try and invade the country and successfully do it from multiple areas. It ended up being an abysmal failure, because offensives like that hardly work. It's practically a miracle if they do. One front, one punch offensives are the best way to do it. We saw that with the Germans twice against the French through the Argonne Forest, both in World War I and in World War II. Those offensives both turned out to be incredibly successful against the French. We also saw that on D-Day, a one-front offensive, instead of having multiple beachheads in different areas of northern France, we had all of our beachheads centralized in this one area around Caen, and we just sent them straight in. It ended up being wildly successful because it was a one-front push. Even in places like Sicily, actually, I think Sicily was a little different. I think we did have two beaches down there, but at the same time, the Italian garrisons, along with a small German garrison there, was known to be very weak, so we knew it would be successful. But once again, as a historical precedent, multi-front offensives rarely ever work. It's your one-front offensives that are wildly successful, because it emphasizes the element of creating a breakthrough and then exploiting that breakthrough. You can't really get that by spreading out your forces thin over several hundred miles and then trying to conduct multiple breakthroughs with less forces in a single area. So going off of that, I would say that I'll say this. I don't think Zelenskyy should be removed from his position for this mistake. These kinds of mistakes were made very commonly throughout all of history. Hell, look at Sir Douglas Haig. I mean, that guy, he made that mistake multiple times in the First World War, and it was a learning lesson. They're trying to figure out what's going to work best. I think it's something that, is going to be a strike against Zelenskyy in the future when people talk about him as a commander, but I don't think he should be removed from his position. I think it should be a learning lesson for the general, and when the next offensives come around, they learn that multi-front, multiple offensives don't work. It needs to be a single punch, a single breakthrough. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll for now, so we're jumping into our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous $50 donation from Walter A. Lakota Jr., the channel legend, and he says, Aloha, Enforcer Man, and LSA, from OG Ellison Bosun. Yes, sir. He says one reason the AFU is evacuating horses from Avdiivka is because the Russian army might use it for horse meat. One old important rule is to deny your enemy of any source of food.
Walter, you're probably right. I wouldn't doubt it that that's why they took him. But I also imagine that the Russians went up, if they ever captured those, if they were to ever capture horses, they would go up and they would be like, we have liberated these horses. And the horses would be like, oh, yay? And then they go, this one goes to the glue factory, and this one is dinner. And then they're like, oh, bled, we are going to die. But still, thank you for sharing that, Walter. I don't know if you're saying that in seriousness or as a joke. It could be both. I mean, honestly, I could see that going either way. But I would have to say that's probably a true statement. Or they were trying to take him out of there because they were pretty expensive horses or something. Who knows? Maybe one of them was a stud. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for the support, Walter, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it is folks like you who make this thing possible and help us to keep this channel running day in and day out. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And real quick, also, before we get too far away from the topic of talking about the offensive strategy that was used by Ukraine, let's go over the poll that is currently running before it gets out of our minds. The question is, why do you think Zelenskyy chose the wide offensive strategy instead of a focused offensive? 61% said Ukraine didn't have the necessary equipment. 20% said Ukraine didn't have the proper training. 12% said just an incompetent decision. And 6% said arrogance against the USA. And on this one, I got to say it's a tough choice because my initial inclination is to say they didn't have the necessary equipment because I distinctly recall Ukraine saying they needed the air superiority and the jets to be able to properly conduct that type of operation. However, at the same time, they really needed that, especially if they spread their soldiers out among the front line, because that's even more reason to have air support. So, I'm not sure if that's the actual reason. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm kind of leaning toward the 7% option. I think a big part of the decision might have been arrogance, to be completely honest. Zelenskyy is in charge in Ukraine. He's the general there. And, if you're in charge, sometimes you're a little bit resistant to outsiders coming in and telling you what to do, especially when you think you know the territory better. And that could be a major reason why he decided to dismiss the advice of the USA. That wouldn't be, necessarily unexpected, but it was an unwise decision if that was a true motivation behind it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say if I had to go with any of them, I would probably say that they most likely were in that 59% category where they thought they didn't have the necessary equipment. But that's the thing. And that's the problem that I'm having here is that looking back at it now, they don't have the necessary equipment to create a multi-front offensive. They had enough equipment to create the one breakthrough offensive. And that's really all they needed. They don't need all of their forces to be the best and to be Western equipment or to be at a Western standard. Most of their units can remain the way they are. They did have several brigades, though, that were put up to a Western standard and were raised at the beginning of this year, like the 47th Magura, which is the most famous of them all. From what we know, the 47th Magura uses entirely modern Western equipment. It has nothing but Western main battle tanks, and also has nothing but Western APCs and artillery support as well. And going off of that, that is one of the few brigades that is probably the cream of the crop of the Ukrainian army that uses almost nothing but Western equipment. And then we saw that they only dedicated one of these brigades to the offensive at Robotny. The 82nd Air Mobile Assault Brigade, which also has a decent amount of Western equipment, was never really dedicated into actual combat in the offensive. We saw it being put into a reserve role, with the 47th being joined by other units. And I think, other units that didn't have Western equipment, and I think that may have been where they possibly went a little bit awry, at least in that one offensive. They should have, and of course this is armchair generaling, and we don't know everything, so I've got to put that out there. But they could have put all of the Western raised brigades into that one offensive at Robotny, and it probably would have been more successful than it was now. Of course, I'm not going to say that that would have been the fix-all and they would have made it to Melitopol. They probably would have made it to Tokmak, I would have believed, if they just did a one-punch straight down to Tokmak and then spread out along the highways to try and encircle the Russians that had been left on the Surovikin line. That may have been possible, but once again, we're talking about a lot of things that we're not factoring in, like logistics, like the Surovikin line itself, the massive minefields around there. What kind of issues would that pose? Did they even have enough mine clearers to dedicate to those brigades that would have been conducting that offensive to make the move over the minefield successful? All of those things I'm not really able to account for because we don't have the exact breakdown and information to be able to speak about that. But on the level of having enough Western equipment, they did for one major breakthrough offensive. But they didn't have that spread out along the entire front line and try and conduct multiple offensives everywhere. We're also seeing that there is one unit, which is the 14th Brigade, that is near the area of Kupiansk, that has been getting almost all of the Swedish equipment. They've gotten all of the STRVs, they've also gotten all of the CV-90s, and for some reason, they don't really use them a lot at all. We don't even really see them dedicated to the line up in Kupiansk. And I'm starting to think, and I'm trying to think about how to put this, I think they're kind of scared to dedicate the Western equipment to the front lines because they're scared that somehow, some way, it might end up getting destroyed. Because in some instances, like the 82nd Air Assault Brigade, as well as the 14th, we don't really get a lot of proof that they're really engaging and fighting. I mean, sometimes we see them roll up and pop a few shots, but we don't know that those brigades are just actively engaged in consistent fighting. It seems as though they're being put into reserve, kind of as a quick reaction force that's on a higher level. And that may also be an issue, but once again, I gotta say this. While I'm talking a lot about what I think may be the issues, this is something that is probably I'm going to completely admit, well above both of our pay grades, because this takes a lot to factor in, and we don't have everything that we can factor in to make a clear statement. But that would be my opinion, just seeing what we see right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to, I think, the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the news again.
All right, and the final super chat of this segment goes to Hal Rose, another channel legend who throws in a $50 donation. And huge shout out to you, Rose, and thank you once again, Hal, for that support. And they said, Enforcer Matt, thank you for keeping a focus on Ukraine, and please pick a question from the chat, please. And of course, Slava BC Skyman. And yes, here I'm BC Skyman. And I messed that all up. I was trying to think about how to say it.
And Ron BC Skyman. And thank you so much for the support, Hal Rose, legend in the community, and an old guard as well. And yeah, thank you so much for enjoying us, keeping the focus on Ukraine, while we want to make sure to cover other stuff around the world. Ukraine is our primary focus still, and while for a little bit we did put the homesteaders above the Ukrainians in the news coverage for a little bit, this is still taking precedent. I think this is much more important in scope right now than what's going on down there. But, you know, that's always subject to change on a day-to-day basis, but it hasn't yet. And I thank you so much for appreciating that, and I thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help keep this thing rolling. We run this thing ad-free and sponsor-free. The only thing that's able to keep us alive, much like Wikipedia and much like PBS, is support from the viewers like you, Hal. And I gotta thank you so much for coming in tonight and supporting us and keeping us running, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to be on air. And I always want to remind people of the importance of supporters like you, because y'all are truly what help us to be able to pay the bills and be here every single night. So thank you so much once again, and we will make sure to get a question from the chat. But before we do, Slava BC Skyman, absolute legend. And so with that, what do we got for a live chat?
All right, and our live chat question is going to go to DT, who says, was Ukraine the first to use drones in the war? And I assume he's talking about consumer drones.
They are not. The first place I saw the drones being used in a decent amount was actually in the Nagorno-Karabakh war in between Armenia and Azerbaijan in about 2020. That's really the first time we saw commercial drones being used on a somewhat larger scale. And that's where that's probably where the idea of using commercial drones in war really was born. It really took flight, though, in Ukraine, because while it happened in the Nagorno-Karabakh War of 2020, it wasn't really that big of a usage. It was in its infancy at that point. People were kind of seeing the potential in using the drones like that, but they hadn't fleshed it out like the Ukrainians started to do. Then we saw at the beginning of the war, some Ukrainians apparently had been paying attention to the Nagorno-Karabakh war because it was kind of in the neighborhood, and they went, hey, that's kind of cool, let's just see about using the drones, maybe they'll be effective. And then they started to see that they were wildly effective against infantry, and when rigged properly, they were wildly effective against armor as well, at just a few $1,000s. So then Ukraine took it and ran with it. Now we know them as being the people who kind of invented the light bulb or the automobile. We all know that Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb, and we all know that Henry Ford didn't invent the automobile, but they were the ones who took it and ran with it, so they usually get the credit because they're the ones who did it the best. And that's kind of what Ukraine's probably going to be remembered as. Nagorno-Karabakh will, be remembered as kind of like the birthing ground, but Ukraine is going to be a place that's known for being the birth of modern drone warfare, like we're going to be seeing it for decades on at this point now. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much once again for sponsoring an interesting question, Hal Rose. That was a really neat one, and I got to thank you so much for being here with us tonight and helping this team to keep running. And so with that, it is now time for us to move on back into the news, and starting off with an interesting little tidbit here in the town of Voronezh. Some of y'all may have heard of Voronezh before. This is one of the cities that Priggy's boys drove through back during the coup in the summer. And also, this is a place where a drunk Russian truck driver ran into a convoy of buses that were taking Russian soldiers to the front lines. Check it out as it unfolds on security camera.
Oh, dear.
Oh, bliet.
Oh, bliat.
And what?
Oh,
and
no.
the driver's nickname from henceforward was the Finster.
Finsta.
And now we see the Russians running away from the buses. They're like, get up, lad! It's a Ukrainian truck attack! But with that scene of that local, I just thought that was funny. I thought it'd show to y'all. It's not really like a front-wide thing. We can't really take anything from it. It's just a funny clip of what happened 2 days ago. But moving on from that, we're now getting on down into the Kupiansk area again, where we got to see that the Ukrainians are hitting some Russian systems with the hammers. Bada boom, a bada bing, a bada boom. And check it out. It's a Russian system. I called it a Russian system because it's like a thingamabob. I don't really know what it is. But we can see the Ukrainians apparently calculating calculus on top of this thing with this little animation. And then we can see the HIMARS come down right on top, knocking this thing out. And we can see the Russians running, Russians crying, and most importantly, a Russian system like that. What can I say? Beautiful to see, and love to see it. Moving on from that and into our next clip near Nizhny and Avdiivka, we also got to see that the Ukrainians caught some Russians unpacking. They saw the Russians here and they said, let me guess, spring cleaning? And the Russians went, it's not spring, it's winter. And the Ukrainians said, who cares? And then they just blew them away anyways. So here it comes. Any second now. We see the Russians running away. I don't know why. Oh, that's why. Look at that. There they go again. This is slow-mo. We see the driver getting out. He's like, oh, blit. And he got out just in time. Fwapang. Got it. And that truck is knocked out for good. Very nice to see. And great to find them unpacking. Hopefully their vacation won't be too long. And I'm sure the Ukrainians will always help them out with making sure that it's a short trip. Moving on from that into Kuzmivka, we also got to see the Ukrainians destroying an electronic warfare post called the Muron M. These things are very common, but always important to knock them out because they give the Russians a little extra eyeball on the front lines. And we know what the Ukrainians like to do. They like to poke them out. Poke them out, boy! And here it comes.
You know what this drone operator's probably saying behind the scenes on the remote control?
What?
Kill him! Ooh! Kill him!
Ooh! Kill him! But we can see the Muron M get blown away. Literally evaporated. Watch this. Here it comes. And there goes the camera. It's gone. It literally disappeared.
That was a very precise little schmacking.
Man, they schmack him up and schmack him around. You know what I mean? And there it is. Little shards and pieces of it all over the place. And that thing is gone. Moving on from that.
Flower.
It's slow. But moving on from that into our next bit of news near Svatove, we also got to see some Russian soldiers filming the remains of their camp after, well, actually, the Tor, and also a grad that had apparently been knocked out a little earlier. Okay. Well, there's the Tor. That thing's toasty. You can see a little bit of burn damage on it. And, oh, dude, the radar, man. They literally, like, had a chunk taken out of it. The Ukrainians said, can I have a bite? And the Russians said, only a small one. And then they pulled out comically large chompers and just bit off, like, half of the radar.
Those Russians are always talking about, can I have a morsel?
Man, the Ukrainians are always saying, ease for me? And then they knock it out. They take that thing out. But that's the...
And also, BC Skyman saying that you woke up his friend Yuri.
Oh, very sorry.
You're being so loud.
Good morning, Yuri. Good morning, and I hope you're doing well, Yuri. I haven't met you yet, but I hope that this is a good first impression we're making, that we're waking you up. But moving on from that and into the area of Krasnoyarsk, we also got to see that the Ukrainians are helping to keep the Russians warm through winter. We all know the winter is a cold time, and the Ukrainians like to help out, specifically in the Rarog Brigade, or Rarog, but they help out by dropping thermite bombs on the Russians. Look, it's keeping them warm. Here comes another one on top of a KAMAZ. That fire will keep the Russians warm for days. Plus, maybe for the rest of their life. Here comes another.
KAMAZ sounds a lot like another group of people.
I don't know what you mean by that. All right. I'll take that.
KAMAZ.
I don't know what you mean at
You
all
know,
by that. I'm completely missing the
Okay.
joke.
I'm trying not to say the word, man. What's the code word? Homelanders or outfield
Party
or what's the
goers?
word? Is that the party goers? The Kamos.
Oh!
You still don't get what I'm
Oh!
saying?
Yeah,
Oh
no,
my
I
God,
get it.
man.
I finally
Your
got
brain's
it.
fried from that exam.
Fried? Dude, it's battered and battered and fried, dude. Damn, call this assault and battery. Because my brain, it's not handling this right now. And someone said in the live chat, ground chickpeas. That actually kind of sounds
That's hummus.
Oh yeah, that's hummus. Yeah, dude, like hummus is so good. Man, maybe that needs to be the new code word, you know, because that's a lot more similar than party goers, you know.
Yeah, hummus.
Yeah, I think we're going. I don't like. Well, I'll tell you this. I do like hummus in real life, but for the purposes of the news that we're going to be covering, I don't really like hummus. But we'll get to that in a little bit. We can see them continuing to hit MTLBs, and they're just schwacking these things. Look at them go. Look at them go. Oh, Grot? Oh, wait a minute. Ural, sorry. And that's the end of the clip. But nice to see. Very nice to see. Moving on from that, down into the area of Bakhmut, we also get to see the Ukrainians setting up an ATGM and getting it ready to go. And they always have to have music. You know, do y'all want me to start singing for y'all? Do you? Because we can get music in here. It's just that it's going to make your ears bleed. But we can see the ATGM being set up right over there. Smalling, I don't know what it is, but that doesn't sound right, Matthew. Do you see that in the live chat? Like, it's almost funny how that sounds when I think it out in my head.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to think, to be honest with you.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. I think a new derogatory term has just been made right there. Like that one. It went from just a code word to right there. It became something else. I was like, dang. But with that, we're moving on to our next clip, where I got to see a Russian shooting up the Finn and getting bent. Check it out.
Oh, Finn.
Man, look at this guy. He's about to be tranked. Not with trank, but with a drone. There it goes. Oh, look at that. Dude, he's got the stuff.
What's he got?
Man,
Is that Clorox?
He got a little baggie.
Biggie bag. Look at him checking in it too, like he just received it from Amazon or something.
Oh.
Oh my.
I guess you could say that
Wow.
he was high, not in the way he wanted to be, but with that's the end of that clip, and we're now going to be moving on into our next one, near Avdiivka, where we got to see a Russian T-72B3 blown up. You know, over the war, it used to be that I used to think that T-72B3 sounded completely normal, but over the war, I don't know about y'all, but this is starting to sound like a fax machine to me, a T-72B3. But anyways, here's the clip.
Man, these intros are getting out of hand. Wow.
Oh, there it is. And here it comes. And it's got a low battery, of course. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, dude, the commander already knew what was up. His spidey senses were tingling. He said, I gotta get out of here. He started trying to climb out of the turret as the drone comes on down and slams right into, oh my God.
Damn. He
Dude.
didn't well, yeah, he didn't quite have a good day that day.
And I think his day was ended right there.
It was a good day. He didn't get to use his AK.
Dude, I've never seen a tank blow up like that. Like, that blew me away. Like, usually when drones hit these tanks, like the engine bay catches on fire, or there's a small fire that starts, you don't see the tank go Oppenheimer up in here. Look at this. They hit the back. I'd never seen this before. That is insane.
That is nuts.
That thing literally detonated. There was no turret toss either because the explosion came from the turret itself. So the tank just evaporated on the spot. That is insane. But anyways, we can say that this guy is getting flight miles today. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also get to see that the 63rd Brigade was hitting some Russian forces. Uh-oh. They didn't like that clip, so we won't be able to show that to y'all. But moving on from that and down the lines into the southern front near Poltavka, we also get to see some pictures of a PT-91 Twardie, which is a Polish variant of the T-72, in action in the area. Look at this thing. Isn't it cool? That's pretty cool.
Oh, and there's a guy. Cool, I gotta say, Oh, look at him under there. He's crazy, just crawling up underneath that tank. Look
Dude,
at him.
he's down there going, okay, what do I need to work on? And he unscrews like one bolt and dust pours into his eyes. And he's like, they're like burning for like days. But anyways, with that, we're moving on into our next little clip where we also got to see another T-72B3 being destroyed. And Man Machine, that's an interesting one. Did you see that? Man, instead of calling them hummus, you can call them dump truck. But anyway.
Dump truck.
All right.
Chris's mom.
Oh, dude, Chris's mom still getting smacked.
Oh, you could hear that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, whoops. I didn't mean for that to get out there.
Whoopsies. Well, at least we all know that Chris's mom is doing well in at least one way. But we can see that little T-72B3 cooking up, just like Chris's mom is cooking up the hashish, and we can see it continuing to burn. And just in case y'all didn't know, it has been destroyed. We're now going to be moving on from that little clip and on into our next one, behind the area of Avdiivka, where we got to see a Ukrainian BMP column awaiting orders. They're just chilling. Snowfall isn't really that heavy down in this area. It's actually still without snow. It's one of the few places on the front like that, though. And it's all foggy out there. Just look at that. Wow. But with that, that's the end of the clip right there. And we're now going to be moving on into our next one. And also, by the way, everyone, really quickly, it's not a Chris that's here. It's not Chris Cooper that we're talking about. We're talking about a Chris that came in here and threw heat at us and threw shade at us. And we went off on that guy's mom and banned him. And so we just continue to talk about that guy. It has nothing to do with Chris Cooper. Chris Cooper, you're fine. It's not your mom. Your mom is very nice. But moving on from that, that actually sounded like a roast in its own way. I did not mean it like that. I did not mean it like that, Chris. You're fine. You're good. Everyone that you know, everyone that you're involved with, you're good. But that other Chris, though, I got a problem with him. We're beefing with that, man. But anyways, moving on from that and down into the area of Kherson, we only got one clip, and it showed a 2S7 Peon and also an OSA SAM system getting hit. Check it out. We got a shark with wings and a drone made of a skull. And we can see the Peon down there. Oh my lord!
No!
Critical hit! And looks like they
Mass
got that.
destruction!
Triple kill. But we can see that they got that thing pretty effectively. Oh, and they got to rewind it now. We're gonna skip.
Easy targets.
Easy targets. Let's see what's left. Not much. Not much at all.
Almost like Hardy's new special, a charbroiled number 5.
Dude, you know what I like better, though? This Osa here that's whipping this corner so hard it almost tipped over. Dude, that thing knows it's being hunted. It's like, I gotta get out of here. Dude, that thing drifted.
You're lucky it didn't turn into a Tony truck.
Dude, that stupid little goofy amphibious truck thing drifted. That is crazy. And look at it go.
Damn, it's hauling ass. Look at it go.
They're going on the driving course and everything just to get blown up at the end of it. Look, they're like, we're safe now. Nobody can hurt us here. As the crew runs away from the thing, they're like, I gotta get out of here. It's about to get blasted, y'all. There we go. There's one hit. Second hit's probably gonna be right on it. And here comes the second hit. Right on top. You know it's a good hit when the smoke is burning white, because that means it hit the fuel cells inside of those missiles, and it knocked it out. Beautiful. Beautiful. Wow. The tasteful hit. The perfect thickness. Wow. But with that, that's the end of that clip right there. Great to see, and wonderful to know that the Ukrainians were able to do their best. Moving on from that into the area of Khmelnytsky, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, we can see a MiG-29. That was just kind of cool to look at. Look at this. They even have a little skull on the side with a MiG-29 for the nose. Pretty sick, I gotta admit. We see them loading.
Very sick. I like.
You see them loading up some R-73s. Man, this thing is sicker than well, I can't use that joke. I can't use that other joke because that would involve.
Hello?
That would involve on the screen.
Whoa!
Whoa! Cheapers! Cheapers!
Get out of
creepers.
here.
Man,
They have world-class research, world-class not containment.
Chef, waiter, more soup, please. More soup. But anyways, moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see that United 24 put out some very interesting clips about their helicopter operations that they've conducted throughout the war, which is very interesting. And we're going to get into this right now. Check it out.
It's the first time the Russians reported me dead because they saw a Manpads missile hit my aircraft and started bombarding us with 40mm grenades. The Apache for us is like Star Wars. Of course, I would like to fly one.
Name, Yevhen Solovyov, 33 years old. Profession, helicopter pilot. Peacekeeping operations in Congo and Liberia. Hundreds of combat sorties in the war against Russia, including Azovstal and Snake Island. Helicopter piloting is a hazardous job, so the equipment is designed to provide maximum protection for the pilot.
The helicopter carries 2 to 3 tons of fuel, which can ignite instantly in the event of an accident. That's why my gear starts with an American Army aviation pilot's jumpsuit, known for its fire resistance. The underwear, socks, footwear, balaclava, and shirt are also flame resistant, ensuring comprehensive protection. Additional personal protective equipment includes a bulletproof vest and a first aid kit. As for personal weapons, I carry a Makarov pistol and a shortened Kalashnikov.
Yeah, baby! Oh, my lord, he carries a Makarov. Wait, hang on.
I carry a Makarov pistol.
No, that price. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, y'all. This price is cap. All right, this is cap. I'll tell y'all why. I was able to get a Makarov. You can get them for like $400 something, about $500.
Nice. I think they're saying the bulletproof vest, the first aid kit, and the pistol is that much.
Okay, good, because I was about to say if they're saying a Makarov is like $1,400, I was about to be like, nah, that's not it. Like, that's not it. Yeah, have y'all ever held a Makarov? Like, it is simple. It is so simple. It's got to be one of the simplest pistols. It's literally the easiest thing. It's a direct blowback pistol. It's not like it's a extremely like mechanically complicated thing. I was gonna be like, no way in hell that this is $1,400. But if it's the bulletproof vest, the first aid kit, and the Makarov, that would make more sense. But let me hear the clip again just to make sure he said that.
As for personal weapons, I carry a Makarov pistol and a short.
Oh, wait a minute, hang on. I think they got the right price. Because look,
I carry a
they were adding the price to $950. So let me do the math
Makarov.
real quick. 14. Actually, he's saying that the pistol adds about $475. So yeah, that's actually on par. That would be exactly what a Makarov is worth.
pistol and a shortened Kalashnikov.
Now, you know, the pistol
helmet,
is a
the
good
American-
choice, but that Draco, like he was just showing right there, that AK pistol, that's not a good choice. That's no good.
Man, let's see here. Well, he's a helicopter crewman. I mean, he doesn't really need like, a full-size rifle. This is really
No, I'm still not taking a Draco into a battle. If you like crash or something and you need to defend yourself, I'm not having a Draco on a battlefield. That's just a disaster.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, there's a purpose for it. There's a purpose.
The helmet, the American HGU-56/P, is also a crucial part of the equipment and arguably the best helicopter helmet. It provides both
kinda
ballistic
cheap.
protection and safeguards against head
It
impacts.
is.
The helmet features attachments for night vision goggles and a visor that
Oh,
protects
okay, never
against
mind.
debris.
That's it. Never mind. Then it went up to 14,000. So not that
What?
cheap.
How did it jump up to that?
The night vision,
Oh, damn. The
Yeah.
night vision was, dang.
dude. Now putting that into perspective, that's a pretty damn expensive helmet. I mean, you could buy a lot of used cars at that price.
That's why I had to get the Draco. He couldn't afford the nice gun after that.
That's it. When you get them Gucci nods, but you gotta get that Draco.
A visor that protects against debris.
Performing nearly impossible operations is also a specialization of helicopters. In 2022, Ukrainians held the Azovstal plant in Mariupol while it was completely surrounded for several months. To aid its garrison, the armed forces organized helicopter breakthroughs, carrying supplies and support troops.
We approached from the sea. It was early in the morning. We used night vision goggles. The entire city was in smoke. When I landed, I saw the guys greeting us. There was something in their eyes. I don't know. They were just very happy to receive support. In the entire world history, there were no such airborne operations to fly over 100 kilometers deep into enemy territory. And not just once, but 6 times.
Supplies were unloaded at Azovstal in a matter
I don't mean to disagree with that statement, but I would say that the Battle of Idring would count, sort of, I mean, we dropped an entire battalion off in the middle of the jungle in Vietnam by helicopters over multiple waves. I think that kind of counts. I mean, maybe it's not as long of a distance, but I don't think this is the only time that this has happened. But anyways.
matter of minutes, while wounded personnel were taken on board.
On the way back, I felt a hit on the left side and saw tracer bullets near me. One engine shut down. I contacted the pilot flying behind me, but he didn't respond. Later, I learned that 1 or 2 missiles hit him, and he exploded in the air. After that, I maneuvered and simply tried not to crash. Out of 4 helicopters, 3 returned. That was the first time the Russians reported me dead because they saw a Manpads missile hit my aircraft. However, the range was so short that the missile didn't have enough impulse to detonate. So we just pierced the engine and the hull. The Russians knew that helicopters don't fly with such damage, especially not a 100 kilometers distance. But something went wrong.
The second time Russians reported that Yevhen had died was just a few weeks later. He was participating in the liberation of Snake Island.
The Russian infantry saw that helicopters had arrived and started bombarding us with 40mm grenades. At that moment, I felt like I was at a rock concert, where everything inside vibrated from powerful bass. During this operation, there were about 7 enemy fighters in the airspace over the island. As a result, 1 out of our 9 helicopters was indeed shot down, but all others completed the mission and returned.
According to Yevhen, such incidents are much more challenging than any other task.
The most terrifying moments for me are when I come back from a mission knowing that not everyone has returned. You enter a room, and there are the belongings of someone you realize won't be taking them. These moments are the hardest.
The thing is, the use of helicopters has its own specifics. By the book, they're used under a clear air superiority, given that the enemy's air defense is neutralized. However, in Ukraine, these rules don't apply.
In our situation, achieving air superiority and destroying enemy air defenses is impossible. However, we're simply forced to use all the weapons we have. Therefore, even in conditions that are not suitable for helicopter use, we continue to use them. During the hybrid war with Russia before 2022, if you were shot at with a Manpads and a missile flew somewhere near you, it was something impossible. Then everyone was asking the pilot a million questions, writing books about him. Now almost every flight, they launch missiles at us. There are areas where there they will definitely shoot. And you do everything just so that this missile doesn't hit you. Then you land, and they routinely ask you, did they shoot? Well, yes, they did. Okay, good.
Due to the intensity of combat, a pilot in Ukraine is essentially working around the clock.
The cost per flight hour for the Mi-8 is approximately $3,000.
That's it?
As for a trained crew commander,
cheap.
it's around
Yeah.
$3 million
Oh.
and requires a considerable amount of time. Skills, knowledge, and experience are acquired over a long, expensive, and challenging process. In fact, the cost of the equipment and the people who operate it is comparable.
Due to such workload, pilots are considered the elite of the military.
My main type is the Mi-8 or Mi-17 as the export variant. It was developed back in 1961 and was an excellent helicopter at that time. Multifunctional, capable of performing tasks such as troop transport, cargo transport, and fire support. When it comes to troop and cargo transport, this helicopter is one of the best. Regarding firepower, it met the requirements in the 60s, but a lot of time has passed and warfare has evolved, so something more modern is needed now.
The need for modern weaponry in this type of military force is particularly evident.
As of today, the main weapon for our helicopters is unguided aviation rockets. They're designed to be used in conditions of direct visibility.
Helicopters were once called tank killers. However, in Ukraine, it's not entirely the case.
We don't have any aviation anti-tank missiles. If we were given Hellfire 2 or the Israeli Spike with a range of 25 kilometers, we could fire them even from the old Mi-2. The Apache for us is like Star Wars. Of course, I would like to fly one. The Apache is the best helicopter in the world.
I like it. Rep the
For an
set.
attack helicopter, the main things are the weaponry and equipment that allows detecting the target. On an Mi-8, you have to see the target with your own eyes. The Apache's weapon system allows for early target detection even before you see it. You can identify the type of vehicle, know its location, and use weapons from a distance. Our helicopters cannot do that.
Russians have an analog of the Apache called the Ka-52, which is referred to as the flying tank. However, the actual combat has revealed several drawbacks to it. The resistance from Ukrainians has led to the most modern Russian helicopter conducting nose-up attacks from a distance, increasing the range of fire.
So a helicopter that costs as much as 5 Mi-8s was forced to be used in a manner similar to the Mi-8.
When it comes to the flying tank, the Russians weren't lying. The Ka-52 has been shot down several times with portable anti-tank systems, which are not supposed to work against airborne targets. In total, during the full-scale war, Ukrainians have destroyed over 320 enemy helicopters.
Ukrainian warriors daily risk their lives for the sake of their homeland, the future of their children, and for their values. However, Russia is an authoritarian state, and we do not want to live like them. We share the values of the civilized world. Taking risks when you feel supported by this world makes it much easier. So if you want to share in the victory of these values over authoritarianism, welcome to Ukraine.
Very interesting little video about the helicopter forces used by Ukraine. And of course, it's always a very good look from United 24 as to the insights we can get from different kinds of little mini documentaries that they make like that one, showing us what some forces in the Ukrainian military are doing at any given time, or really their story over the whole war. But moving on from that, and on out of the Ukraine war news for just a moment, we're now going to be moving on down to the homesteaders and the partygoers. Actually, we're going to be changing that. The homesteaders are going to keep their name for now. We're going to figure out what to call them as time goes by. But we are going to change the partygoers to something that sounds a little bit more similar. Hummus. We all love hummus when we have it with chips, but when it's over in this part of the world, hummus takes a little bit of a different meaning, and it's not really that great. But moving on into the news in this area, we have seen the hostilities have resumed in large form, and we have also seen that hummus is beginning to become very spicy in areas that it's not supposed to be. You see, down at the bottom of the tin that the hummus is in, it's not supposed to be that spicy, but nevertheless, we did see today that it is had a lot of peppers added to it, if you all know what I mean. I'll show y'all right here. You see, this specific part, the specific part of the hummus tin was supposed to not have any spices inside of it, but it appears that some outside factors and some folks out there have decided that it would be good to add spice to the bottom of the tin, and it appears that they are now starting to, do that kind of thing. The homesteaders responded by immediately trying to remove the spice from the bottom of the tin by, of course, just, kind of burning it away. We can see that right here. It appears that no matter where people go, it doesn't really appear that anyone is safe from hummus. And in fact, people like to actually, hummus likes to seek out places where there may be a large amount of just, folks that are just trying to hang out and, get away from things. But moving on from that, we also saw that the homesteaders started to provide some support by sea today in the area. You see them giving some what is almost like artillery fire.
Kind of like a trebuchet is launching it.
Yeah, they're arcing it on in. Oh,
Look,
you
we
see
went
the
from on land to the water all of a sudden.
yeah. And that's the end of that little clip, but very interesting to see. Moving on from that, we also got to see that apparently some of the tunnels that are used to supply hummus to multiple parts of the area are apparently flooding. We got some footage of that today. They're being flooded deliberately by the homesteaders, so that way the dispersion of hummus can't be so easy throughout most of the area. Oh! Oh heavens! Oh heavens! That's not the sound of artillery. Neither is it the sound of washing winds. It is the sound of rushing water. It's filling to the brim, my boy. Oh, great heavens. Oh. It appears that the hummus is getting a little soggy. But anyways, as you can see, it appears that the distribution of hummus is going to be rather difficult given the current circumstances. Also, I saw a question from 420. He said, "Bro, how was school going? You are so tense." How did you notice? There is so much stress on me. There is so much stress on me. You wouldn't even believe it. I don't want that to be y'all's problem, but I'm not even kidding. I bet you I do sound tense, but I'm trying my best here. Please, please, notice it. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see that the 601st of the homesteaders was in some action today. Check it out, gentlemen. Look at him. We can see them popping off. Oh, pop off, will you? We can see the homesteaders moving on into some of the abodes. And we can see the homesteaders continuing to pop off quite nicely.
You know, Popov is a brand of Russian vodka, you know.
Oh, is that so?
I think so. Let me check.
You now see some folks moving around. And it appears the homesteaders are continuing to pop off.
I think Popov's Russian vodka. I'm pretty sure, but I'm not really certain now that I look at it.
I don't know, man. Why are you asking me? I'm not an alcoholic. Just what we can see, you know, the homesteaders doing some renovations. Some big renovations. And that's the end of that clip, but showing us what the homesteaders have been doing out and about. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see that apparently hummus was getting extremely spicy, even in the middle of the homesteaders trying to get rid of the hummus. And we can see right here that it appears that the spice was being added on to an incredibly dubious amount today, even in the area. But at the same time, in the area of Tel Aviv, we also... Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. I can't mention certain names. But we did get to see that the Dome of Iron was able to intercept some of the incoming spice, and it appears that some teenagers were very close to being quite unfortunate, as one of these little pieces of spice almost fell right on top of them. But actually, they were very lucky because it landed a few feet away. Check this clip out. You see the two teens walking out here, and we can see the piece of spice land literally just feet beside them. Luckily, both of them were uninjured, but it was quite startling. Oh my goodness. How dubious. But anyways, that's the end of that clip right there.
Oh, how dare he!
But getting back down to the area, we also got to see that there was a lot of action going on in the northern part of the hummus tin. And so check it out.
Is this roasted red pepper?
Roasted red pepper, Governor. You like it, yeah?
Or is this pine nut?
And we can see some spice. We can also see that apparently the homesteaders destroyed most of the spice almost immediately. But still, very interesting to see, and good to know that most of them was stopped. But moving on from that, that is generally all of the information that we were able to gather from the area today. And so that we're now going to be moving back into Ukraine to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on the 650th day of the war. And so, without
speech, please.
without
a speech.
Yes, you can. Yes, you may. And
Thank
without
you.
further ado, here is the peach.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Кілька підсумків за цей день. Дякую нашим захисникам неба. Якраз сьогодні збили російський бойовий літак в районі Зміїного у Чорному морі. Літак заходив для удару по Одеській області, ще -1 у терористів. І будемо надалі мінусувати терористів. Посилюємо нашу ППО, зокрема на Одещині, поступово, але відчутно. Я дякую кожній країні, яка допомагає. Сьогодні зустрівся з міністром закордонних справ Нідерландів. Це одна з тих країн, які підтримують нас найбільше, вагомо, зокрема ППО. Обговорили вже зроблене, в тому числі ситуацію на півдні нашої держави, роботу нашого експортного коридору, наш зерновий експорт. Я поінформував про ситуацію на полі бою, про наші можливості, про оборонні пакети, які потрібні. Звичайно, крім іншого, ми встигли обговорити і питання європейської інтеграції. Україна виконує все, що необхідно. І вже найближчими днями очікуємо ухвалення Верховною Радою України кількох євроінтеграційних законопроєктів, дуже важливих. Позиція кожного депутата матиме значення і буде, я впевнений, принципово оцінюватись усім нашим суспільством. І кілька найбільш емоційних речей за сьогодні. Ми започатковуємо нову спеціальну ініціативу для усіх героїв України. Їх на сьогодні 360 від початку повномасштабної війни. Кожен воїн та рідні воїна, якому звання Герой України присвоєно посмертно, отримують від держави квартиру. Не за роки, не колись там потім, а зараз. Сьогодні я мав честь вручити перші документи на квартиру 21 Герой України, воїни Збройних сил України, Національної гвардії, Служби безпеки України, Державної прикордонної служби. Із цих 21 – 9 полеглі герої. І найближчим часом держава забезпечить квартирами усіх героїв України. Усіх, зокрема і тих, хто воював до 24 лютого за час від 2014 року. Бойові хлопці. Бойові. Це справедливо. І дуже символічно, і на рівні сенсів максимально справедливо, що перед Днем Збройних сил України, який ми будемо відзначати завтра, Україна дякує усім своїм волонтерам. Тисячам, десяткам тисяч, сотням тисяч, навіть мільйонам небайдужих українців і українок, які приєднались до волонтерського руху. І у час Майдану, і у час АТО, і зараз у час повномасштабної війни. Ті, хто відчуває втому, але не втомлюється. Хто завжди поруч і почує, і допоможе. Хто часом не знає вихідних, бо знає, що потрібно бригадам. Хто зараз в дорозі на фронт. Хто, можливо, саме цими хвилинами закриває черговий важливий збір. Хто забезпечує машинами, такмедом, дронами, усім тим, що необхідно. Швидкість та уважність, якій державі ще треба вчитися, я дякую. Дякую кожному волонтеру за те, що ви є у України. Дякую всім, хто допомагає також у прифронтових містах, переселенцям, людям літнього віку, родинам з дітьми, хто дбає про реабілітацію поранених, хто пам'ятає, як це важливо, коли сім'ї, що втратили рідних, на жаль, на цій війні втратили, отримують тепло від небайдужих сердець та потрібну підтримку. Я дякую кожному і кожній з дружніх Україні країн, іноземцям, які стали тут рідними, бо теж з нами, з Україною, з необхідності перемогти у цій війні. Перемогти, бо це про людей, про людяність, це про те, чим наш світ має відрізнятися від страшних часів минулого. Світло людської душі повинно перемагати. Слава усім, хто б'ється і працює заради України і українців. Слава нашому потужному народу. Слава Україні!
And
Героям слава!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and that begins the second half of this show. We get to talk to all of you all for the next, perhaps an hour or so. I do find great joy in this, I'll have you all know. Because if it wasn't for getting to talk to y'all, I'd feel like a machine going through this every single night, over and over. But, of course, I do enjoy greatly talking to all of y'all. And Matthew, I'm sure that you've been able to guide the Lee Spring Army in some very interesting and heartfelt discussions about some of the topics of the day.
Yes, we have, and the critters have been saying what they feel is on their minds. They've been saying it very loudly and very clearly. And our first poll question that they answered says, Zelenskyy has abruptly canceled his speech to the U.S. Senate and classified briefings as well. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 35% said, it seems kind of odd, but I need more info first. 27% said Zelenskyy is angry at U.S. leaders. 25% said U.S. leaders likely refused him, and 12% said unsure. And on this one, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I'm not sure why Zelenskyy would abruptly cancel his speech, because even though he may have opposition in the United States government, that has not prevented him from speaking before, so I don't personally think that's the reason. And also for him to cancel his appearance at the classified briefing, that seems to be very detrimental to Ukraine to do so, since that would give him information that he would need to try to assist his forces. So on this one, I'm honestly at a loss. It's kind of odd, and I would like to know exactly why that happened. But Enforcer, you tell me what you think.
I would have to say I don't really know why he would do anything like that, to be entirely honest. Kind of at a loss, and we haven't really heard enough explanations or information surrounding the matter to really get a good idea as to why it happened. So it's really leaving a lot of speculation as to whether he just got pissed or what. We don't really know. But with that, I hope that does kind of address that well, because I really don't even know where to go with it at this moment, because we don't really know enough. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one says, as of today, what are the odds of World War III occurring as a result of active/impending conflicts? And it looks like 34% said somewhat high chances, 29% said somewhat low, 20% said very high chances, and 16% said very low. And on this one, I gotta say that whenever there are major conflicts happening all around the world, like Ukraine, also down there in the Middle East region, and there's also some stuff cropping up potentially in South America, when you got that many things going on at once, and then you have Taiwan and China still festering over there, even though you don't hear much about it anymore, it is still a major issue, and there are some things going on that aren't necessarily that major, but it's still brewing. I would say that whenever that many, like 4 or 5, are running like that the odds of a world war occurring are always somewhat high, but I wouldn't say it's very high. We're not like right on the edge of World War III anymore like we were maybe a month or 2 ago, but we're still very close to something breaking out, and any of these conflicts could be the one to cause it. You just never know, but we always have to prepare. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, can you reread the prompt?
Oh, reread the prompt.
Yes.
It says, as of today, what are the odds of World War III occurring? A result of active impending conflicts.
Oh, I'd say low. I don't think it's going to happen today, or tomorrow. It just doesn't seem like it to me. We're up there, sure. But I don't think it's really going to just pop off, like the pop-off vodka. But with that, I hope that does address that well. At least that's just my opinion on the matter. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, I saw someone say that Popov vodka actually might not be made in Russia, so actually it may not be a Russian vodka after all. I don't really know at this point. I'm not an alcohol drinker, so I couldn't tell you. So if anyone would like to tell us, I couldn't find a clear answer on the internet when I looked it up just a second ago. So y'all let us know, because I'm curious at this point.
Oh, let's see.
But
I found it in my old
Yeah,
boy.
yeah.
This is all.
What you found?
This is all there is on Popov vodka on Wikipedia. It says Popov is a brand of vodka formerly produced by Diageo, I don't know, a North American subsidiary that commands a significant market share among vodkas in the United States and competes in the low-price market, so it's a lot like Grey Goose. In November 2018, Diageo sold Popov vodka and various other brands to the Sazerac company for $550 million, and it is based out of New Orleans, in Louisiana. And it is no longer sold. It is no longer sold as Popov vodka. It's now sold as Tenure England, which sounds honestly stupid. I would rather buy Popov than Tenure England. Yes.
Yeah, really. England's been known for manufacturing vodka, world class.
Yes, excuse me, sir. What would you like your prime minister to be? Well, I'd like my prime minister just like my vodka, Tenure England. But anyways, with that, I hope that doesn't address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and now it's time to stop playing around. We're moving on to our super chat questions, and that sounded more violent than I meant it to sound. Sorry about that.
Anytime we play around the ball.
That came out a little bit crass. That wasn't supposed to be that way. But
It
anyways,
sounded violent. It did sound like
it did. It sounded like I was about to
beat
throw
somebody.
down, throw some fists or something. But anyways, moving on to our first super chat question. During our last question segment, we have a $50 donation from Butchie777, a longtime channel supporter and also legend. And thank you very much for that support. And this is a spicy one. I'm going to try to read it and try to censor it a little bit because it is going hard on Chris's mom.
No, I want you to read that thing the way it is. I'm reading it right now.
You read it. Go ahead.
Wait, hang on.
Go
Let
right
me make
ahead.
sure to censor it. Okay, so I'm gonna have to censor one word, Butchie777. I gotta say, this thing is fire, and I want to know where you getting this kind of fire because I don't even think. Like cavemen would be in awe of the kind of fire you put in this chat right now. But I'm gonna have to censor one word because it's going to be a little too much. But I'm gonna read the rest of it. So more pounds for Chris's mom. Not that she needs any more. With a tonnage on par with a Gerald R. Ford, the way she handles sailors during incoming fire is legendary. The next generation of characters are going to be called the Chris's mom class. And I gotta say,
censored it anyway. He censored it.
well, one word, and I prefaced it.
That was the crucial word.
Yes, but sailors, you know what sailors are, my boy.
Men at sea.
Yes, men at sea, otherwise known as the seamen. But no, nevertheless, I do thank you so much for the incredibly large amount of support, Butchie777. But nothing is as incredibly large as Chris's mother, and much like your super chat was able to point out. And I've got to thank you so much once again for the incredible support, and also making sure to lay down the incredible fire on Chris's mother. Not Chris Cooper's mother. I just want everyone to know that. It's none of the Chris's here. It's a Chris that's long gone. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping us to keep this channel running, Butchie, and helping to make sure that Chris's mother lives on in the Lee Spring Army's memory, because I'm sure that none of you, thankfully, have been acquainted with Chris's mother, but we want to remind you all that such an important creature does exist. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Butchie777. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we're on to the next one, but I must say, very cheeky, Mr. 777, very cheeky. But with that, to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, as always, for that support. Very consistent support, as always, like we mentioned last time, and thank you very much. And Marion says, so happy that the first exams are over. You both rock. And I'm so happy, Marion, the first 3 exams are over. We have one more to go. One more to go. And it happens to be the toughest, the most roughest, and the most brutal one is the 4th one. It's contracts. Of all things. And contracts, there's a lot of stuff to know, and didn't get too much of a review course, if I'm being perfectly honest here. So this one's going to be interesting. So far, I haven't felt bad about the exams, but this 4th one, this could do us in. But Enforcer, what say you?
Well, I have to say, thank you so much for the support, Marion. Sadly, they are all over but one, and it's the one we're most scared about. So hopefully we do well, because, it's something that I'm very scared about. So hopefully we can. But I do thank you so much for the support, Marion. Always consistent with the support and helping us to keep this thing running. And I got to thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, I wouldn't be able to do this and do exams at the same time. I would be doing something else in exams at the same time. And I got to thank you so much once again, because all of y'all's support really does help. And it helps us to keep this channel running. And of course, if you'd like to join in, you know, feel more than free. We would be very happy. We'd love to recognize you and thank you. And it would also help us to keep this thing rolling. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Marion Dima. I hope that does address that well. And thank you once again for making this channel possible so we could get to this point. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we had 2,000 likes. Yeah! Thank you all for hitting the like button and smashing it. Y'all smashed that like button so hard. Worse than Chris's mother. But anyways, moving on to our next one. I was debating whether or not I was going to say that. Anyways, moving on to our next one. We have a $20 donation from LSA Sergeant Figment, longtime channel supporter and also viewer as well. And thank you very much for that support. He said, glad to be here and LSA all the way. Get on your feet, soldiers, and show some support. And hit that like button and take one from the live chat. I'll come up with some good questions as the news unfolds. I'm Israel Chai and Slav Ukraine.
And thank you so much for being an absolute legend, Mr. LSA Figment. And I got to thank LSA Sergeant Figment, actually. And I got to thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We are glad to have all of y'all here with us. And of course, LSA all the way. And also, please do get on your feet and show support to Ukraine and hit the like button. It does help us out a lot in getting the news out there. Although YouTube doesn't promote us to anybody new. But still, I do thank you so much for that. And also, y'all hit that like button. Hit it good. And also, we will make sure to take one from the chat, LSA Sergeant Figment. I've got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And hopefully, we will get some good questions from you here soon. And I think we do have something lined up from you next, a little bit down the list. But I do want to thank you so much once again, and am Yisrael Chai and Slav Ukraini. And thank you once again for enjoying this channel, supporting us, and helping us to keep this thing running, even through difficult times. And so with that, what do we got for the live chat, Matthew?
But anyways, moving on to our live chat question.
Dude, that was the most audible
actually
goal.
on purpose, believe it or not.
Dude, that
was a joke. But anyways, moving on to our live chat question, we have one from Wyatt Logan, and he says, "What's up with Zelenskyy going around his main general Zaluzhny? What's up with that?
What's up with that?
What's going on, man?
Well, I mean, it looks like you may be getting unhappy with him. And Hoodoo Texas actually brought up a point that, you know, it's normal to get through generals. You know, look at Lincoln in the Civil War. He went through like 4 of them that I believe were the Supreme. Well, not the Supreme. They didn't have the Supreme back then. Well, they had the Supreme Court, but they didn't have like a Supreme Commander of like Allied forces or anything. It was, I forgot their, dang, it's like General of the Army. They went through like 4 of them or 5 of them. You know, they had McClellan, Burnsides. They had loads of them. But one thing I do have to say about that is that Hoodoo Texas does have a point. But the Civil War was kind of exceptional, you know, because I know that in, you know, my world, people make jokes about how quickly Lincoln would go through general after general. And it was with good cause. They all sucked, except for the last one, you know. Grant, he was a real deal. But the rest of them just sucked, and they were terrible generals, terrible commanders, never did anything right. And so, yeah, that is true in that regard. But usually in other wars, we see that the guy who's put in charge at the beginning stays there until the finish. The best example would be World War I, because we saw Sir Douglas Haig put in charge of the British forces, the British Expeditionary Force in France, and he remained in that position from the beginning of the British involvement in the war all the way until the very end of the war and even afterwards. We saw the same with General Pershing, although America was only there for about 11 months, so that doesn't really count. He wasn't even there that long. You know, the war in Ukraine is nearly twice that length. And then we also saw... Oh man, I know I'm going to get this wrong, and some of you World War I history enthusiasts are going to get me good on this one, but it was either Pétain or Foch. That was the supreme commander of the French forces in the First World War, and they stayed there, from what I understand, I believe all the way through duration as well, from the very beginning of the war until the end. And I think it was the same for the Germans, although I never really looked at their command structure as much as I looked at the Allied command structure in the First World War. And then in World War II, it was fairly similar. Like, Eisenhower was the supreme commander of Allied forces in Europe, and MacArthur was as well. They were put into those positions practically at the beginning of U.S. involvement and remained there all the way until duration. And so, once again, the example stands. Usually, the commander that's there, they usually stay there, at least off the World War precedents. In other situations, well, I wouldn't count the Gulf War. I was about to count the Gulf War, but the Gulf War was such a short war, there really wasn't time to have the competency of Schwarzkopf questioned. Although I don't think it would have ever come into question, because Schwarzkopf was the greatest commander of really coalition forces, or any forces for that matter, in my opinion, in the later half of the 20th century. So I don't think his competency would have ever even been questioned anyways, but for the most part, I think the historical precedent is it's actually kind of rare to remove a top commander like Zelenskyy and have him replaced. It was actually kind of weird when Reznikov was replaced, and there was a new minister of defense put in. That was a little odd, but still, it is up to Zelenskyy whether he finds the competency of a commander to be in question or not. And if he's starting to see that Zelenskyy isn't as assertive and aggressive as a commander if he wants, that may be where the problem lies. And I think at this point, nearly 2 years in, Zelenskyy has been given a lot of leeway and a lot of time for Zelenskyy to decide whether he likes his strategy to fighting the war or not. And that may be the issue that's underlying this problem that we're hearing about in between Zelenskyy and Zelenskyy. So with that, I hope that does address that question the best I can. I think that would be the best answer I could give. And I got to also thank you for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make it possible, LSA Sergeant Figment. And it means a lot to us that not only do you throw in a lot of value to the stream, much like everyone else does, like Mark, the recidivistic. What is Mark's name now? It's not the recidivistic drone operator. It's like Mark and then some Latin phrase, but
Mark CV Parabellum, something like that.
Viz something. Yeah, now I'm like kind of getting it a little bit. But like Mark, like BC Skyman, like Hal Rose, like Butchie 777, like so many of y'all, Marion Deemer. I'm trying to think of the whole list. It's impossible. There's so many of y'all. Butchie 777 we already named. White Lightning 777. So there's literally an endless list. AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang. I'm trying to think of some names. But all of y'all add value to the stream, not just in support and helping this channel to keep on running, but in what y'all add in as facts and tidbits and y'all's opinions in the chats. And I gotta thank y'all so much, including you, LSA Sergeant Figment, for always being here and being unique members of the Lee Spring Army that really gives it a character. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and I've got a very interesting poll that's about to go up especially for all the military folks out there that used to eat MREs all the time, and even for the folks that didn't eat MREs all the time. Y'all can see what y'all think about that poll. Be sure to answer it. The question is, if you can't see it, if you were a Ukrainian soldier and could only choose one type of MRE to eat for months, what would it be? And there's your 4 options. So, with that being said, we're moving on to our next one. Actually, do we need a live chat question?
No, I think we actually just covered that one from LSA Sergeant Figment. So with that, we are on to the next one.
Oh, okay. So the next one goes to Melissa Renee Swamp Hag of the LSA.
Hey!
And thank you very much, Melissa. That is an interesting name you put there, but thank you very much for the support, the $20 donation. And Melissa said, I hope you can get a couple of good cups of coffee for finals and take a question from the chat. Soviet Green.
And thank you so much, Melissa, for the support. I do have to say, very spicy name, but we do appreciate it, and I thank you for the support. And also, thank you for trying to get us a couple of nice cups of coffee. I personally don't drink Starbucks. Now, I know many people say that's the way to save money. I hate to tell y'all, I don't think it is. Just like I think if I'm saving, hell, I never even drank Starbucks anyway, so I'm not hardly saving anything. But I still thank you so much. I will be drinking loads of Busy Nitro Cold Brew with that $20, and I gotta thank you so much for that. Because if it isn't for folks like y'all, we're not able to drink coffee. Y'all hear that on every single super chat. But I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this thing to keep running, because you've been around forever, Melissa. I think you've been around since at least day 4 from what I can remember. And I got to thank you so much for being here with us tonight and wishing us well on those finals. It's crazy to think that when this war started, I had just become a junior in undergrad pursuing a bachelor's in history. And now at this point, you're wishing me well on finals at the very end of the first semester of law school. It's crazy to think how far we've come on this stream. And it's crazy to think that it was almost 2 years ago that we started doing this, because I can't even really remember what's been happening over the last 2 years, really, in my own life, because it's been so busy. I haven't really had time to just sit down and like think about what's been going on and how life has moved on. But that is crazy to think that you've been here so long. That I was a junior in college when you first got here, and now I'm almost going to be halfway through my first year of law school. Absolutely insane. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Char G, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much for the support. He says, how much do you think the F-16s will change the war when they arrive and begin missions?
The F-16s are going to change a good amount. As far as the air superiority side of things is concerned, the F-16s can conduct seed missions, and that means they're able to destroy radar installations like the Tor system, the Tunguska, the Buk, the Shilkas, if the Russians even use those much anymore. They'll be able to destroy those relatively easily. The only issue, though, is that they can't destroy manpads, because manpad doesn't use an active radar. It's a passive system. It doesn't actually, I think, send out really any large radar signatures, and so the seed missions wouldn't be effective against those. But against larger SAM batteries, they would be. And if you're able to knock those out, you're able to achieve air superiority and begin to conduct ground strike missions to help out the troops in the field. So I think it's going to be a pretty big game changer in my opinion. But I don't think we're going to see the F-16 get introduced and then the Ukrainians win in a month. I still think it's going to be a little bit of a lengthy war, but it certainly will help out massively for the Ukrainians to achieve air superiority. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and also sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment again. Sarge, who puts in a 10 this time, actually. And thank you very much for the support. He says, a cool place to check out on the map would be Montclair, New Jersey. And more specifically, Eagle Rock Reserve, a 911 memorial. And this is the town I was trying not to say that because YouTube doesn't like it, but this is the town I grew up in, and thoughts.
And also, this is out here. This is near the medieval times. Hey, get it? But,
you live in Montclair. Oh.
You know, that sounds pretty ritzy. I'm not going to lie. Montclair, that sounds pretty high-end. Sounds a lot more high-end than Garfield. Who the hell lives in Garfield?
Hey guys, it's Garfield.
Dude, you're going to eat a lasagna.
You saw that guy that, I think it's Chris Pratt is voicing Garfield now. Did you see that?
Yeah, I don't know what to think about that, because he also voiced Mario, too, in the new Mario movie. I never watched it, but it's like, that's kind of weird that this guy is, like, voicing, like, these animated characters, you know? His voice is pretty, you know, specific. It doesn't seem like it really fits any of these characters, but they just keep on casting him for these roles. I don't know why. Like, I'm completely at a loss.
I don't either. They did make Garfield look a lot better, though. But, you know, the voice acting is a little bit strange.
I gotta, you know, I feel like that's a pretty on-point statement. It is weird. I don't really know how to explain, but let's take a look at Montclair. Let's see.
Montclair!
Oh, Montclair. Let's take a look.
Oh, it is ritzy. Oh,
this is very...
Oh, Bronco. Look at that nice Bronco. Cuban Pete's, too.
Jerry, I'm in with the Cubans at the embassy. I'm able to get these cigars. But anyways, let's see here.
Wait, turn to the right. Turn to the right. Oh, arg. That's a Bronco. Can I have any Bronco? They've added some fender flares. Oh, looks pretty nice. Some spotlights, too. This will go good in Ukraine. Could Zelenskyy have 5?
We need more Broncos. But anyways, let's move down the street. Let's see here. Dude, this is nice. Look at these roads. Like, immaculate.
No road snakes. I don't see any road snake.
So I'll tell y'all something, y'all. I'm a huge sucker for well-paved roads. If you have a well-paved road, I love your place. Like, that's just how it works, you know? I might be on the spectrum. I don't know. But anyways, I love paved roads.
Spectrum.
That's a
bad internet company.
Bad internet company, and I might be on it. But anyways, this city is beautiful. Like, this is really nice looking. Look at it.
It looks like a Disney World. Oh, goodness. Montclair.
But I gotta say, this place is gorgeous. Really cool place. Dude, if you grew up here, this is way better than where we grew up. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, if you saw where we grew up, it was not as nice as this. This is just like if I had to explain, like, just from how we grew up, like what this is comparable to, this to us would be like the top. Like, you were in the top 1% of people in the state of Alabama if you lived anywhere like this. And this is just impressive. I mean, it really is. And it's a great
This
downtown.
is literally just Mountain Brook, really. Like, we have a very small little area just like this in Birmingham called Mountain Brook, and everything there is expensive as hell. If you pay $5 for something on the other side of town, you're paying 10 in Mountain Brook, and it's the same thing. Probably the same thing going on in this place.
Maybe. Kind of like the gun stores that rip everyone off because they're on 280. Not calling anyone out, but that's it. But anyways,
Call them out.
go call them out. But anyways, this is just incredible. And Matthew's right. There is one place in Alabama like this. It's called Mountain Brook. But Mountain Brook is very special because it actually is where the top 1% of everyone in Alabama lives. The founder of Shipped lives in Mountain Brook. And also a couple of other people. It's the wealthiest county in the state of Alabama, and so it looks like this. But no other place in Alabama looks like this. I'll show y'all a little bit of where we are from. Let me see here. Let me go down to, let's see. Where do we want to go, Matthew? Do we want to go to the source, or do we want to go to the outskirt?
You can show them where we grew up. Show them the area.
Which one? Which one? I'm trying to figure out. Like, the real
You
one?
could literally probably take it down to the street, really, because that's so far back, it doesn't even matter. It's not like doxing or anything.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll show y'all. This is where we
No,
came.
not here. Not in this place.
Well, that's what I was kind of asking right there. So it looks like we
No,
already
Montgomery.
All right, so let me go down here now that okay, anyways. Let's drop down and I'll try and show us. I'm not Cloverdale because Cloverdale is like the only nice part of Montgomery left, kind of, but
Take us over to the little area where we grew up, over there near Hillwood.
We'll drop y'all down here. This is what was like we normally grew up in. Is this, so whenever we see anything that's better looking than this, we're like, damn, this is a nice place, because that's what we grew up in. So yeah, that is what it is. But anyways, now that I'm completely distracted by the huge screw up we just had, I do thank you for the support, and I hope that does address that well. Really nice to see the place that you grew up in the city of Montclair, and I gotta say, pretty high end. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, you're misunderstanding something, by the way. You don't know where we lived, apparently. It's because you're misunderstanding what I'm saying.
No, I know where we live, but we didn't live entirely there. We drove around the city and went other places, so that's what we normally saw on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, don't really understand where you're coming from, but that's fine, though. But moving on to our next little Super Chat question, we have one from Old Buzzard. Old Buzzard, who puts in a 10 and says, keep on trucking. And thank you, Old Buzzard, for that support.
And thank you so much, Old Buzzard, for the support, you old buzzard. And we will make sure to keep on trucking. And I gotta thank you for the support, because the support helps us to be able to do things in the background that are real-life things that help us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing trucking. So thank you so much once again. And thank you for enjoying this channel enough to find it worthwhile to support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figman, who puts in a 10. And it's Sarge once again. Thank you, Sarge, for that support. He says, Harper's Ferry was a fun lesson to teach. I taught them about the raid, and the students fell in love. Boy, they were in for a surprise on Monday when we wrapped up the lesson.
And thank you so much for support. Really cool to hear that you did teach them about the Harper's Ferry. Pretty cool. And I gotta say, I hope you enjoyed teaching it. We didn't really touch on Harper's Ferry a lot at our school. Really, because Alabama education is subpar. Here's how our history would go. We would hear about the Revolutionary War. We would go to, just a skimming over of the Civil War. And then for, half of the year, we would talk about the Holocaust. And then at the end of the year, literally in the last week of school, they'd be like, oh, by the way, after the Holocaust, there was, this whole thing called the Cold War. It doesn't really matter. I'm sure that's not even important to y'all. And then there was this thing called 9/11. Okay, everyone, have a great summer. And that was, our whole entire year. So I can tell you up and down about just from like my high school, the Holocaust, because we literally went over it for months every single year. But I don't think anyone from my school could tell you about Harper's Ferry because I had to learn about that on my own outside of school because they never really talked about it. Kind of annoys me how much like Alabama public education is so lopsided. Like, I get what they're doing with, the whole Holocaust side of things, but it's like it doesn't need to be like 6 months of school. It just needs to be like, 2 to 3 weeks because there's so much other stuff to cover that's very important, like the Cold War is a very important thing. And I don't think any kids know about the Cold War in Alabama. They just don't get told about that. But still, really cool to hear that you were able to teach them about Harper's Ferry, which is a very interesting part of American history. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you make this thing possible. And so thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Alan Garner, who puts in a 10. And sadly, Alan does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Alan, for that support and helping to keep us running. It does keep the coffee flowing and the lights on in the background, so we do appreciate it very much. And up next, we have a 10 from Ed. And Ed says, sad, Irish Ed.
Aw.
He said, I'm an early 80 kid. USA chant, equal good Ruskies, equal bad home, question mark, equals friends. Anti-home, whatever, equals bad question. I'm not following that. I'm not really sure if that was a typo or not. He says, is USA still USA? He says, no. Free speech. What's wrong with USA? FYI. And something. I'm not sure if that's getting political or what. Enforcer, I'll let you decide.
Well, I thank you for the support, Irish Ed. Unfortunately, I'm not really understanding that one either, but I do thank you for the support nevertheless and helping us to keep this thing running. And I've got to say, yeah, that's it. I don't really know how to respond, but still, thank you so much once again, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And if you want to clarify that, because I think it may just be going over our heads right now because we're like burnt, let us know, and we will try and circle back to it a little bit later. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, I see a lot of people in the chat talking about their history class. Some people didn't even get taught about World War I. Like, they just stopped before that. That is crazy. I feel like there are like important things to me that should be covered in history class. Like, especially, and I can't talk for every country because every country is going to emphasize different things because y'all have your own stories. So, anyone in Britain, y'all are going to have entirely different history from us. Y'all probably start off at like, Boudica at the collapse of Rome. That's probably a good point to start. Or at least talk about the Roman Empire in Britannia and then move on from there. That's probably a great place to start for British history. But in America, you have the discovery of the Americas. You then have the Age of Exploration after that, where, you had Cortez, De Soto, all those people. They did their thing. And then you move on from that, and then you move on into the Revolutionary War. Nobody talks about the War of 1812 in history class. It's just never covered. Like, nobody even mentions it. The War of 1812 is really important. Then it would be important to talk about all of the wars we had, lumped together, called the Indian Wars that we had with the Native Americans out in the Midwest, in American expansion that way, because, they just say, manifest destiny, yay! And then they never, tell you everything involved in that, which is really interesting because, there's a lot of gray area. It's very complex, very interesting. Don't go into it deep enough ever to make it interesting, so it just sounds boring as hell on the surface. But move on from that, talk about the Civil War, talk about the Reconstruction, which they breeze over as well. That's a very important thing to talk about Reconstruction, talk about the Spanish-American War, which is really the first time America started to stretch its legs in the international sphere, talk about Teddy Roosevelt and how he really brought America onto the world stage by brokering the peace in between Japan and Russia in 1905 in the Russo-Japanese War. And then talk about World War I, World War II, of course, cover the Holocaust during World War II segment in history, then talk about the Cold War, and then talk about the modern day. I feel like that would be a well-covered history class on America, just kind of giving a little bit of a brief overview of everything, maybe getting into some very specific tidbits here and there to make it a little bit more interesting. But that would be my role, my just role model history class. It was never done that way, but I feel like that would be the perfect way to actually have people interested in history, because instead of just giving them these weird episodical things, you give them an actual timeline to go off of where they actually know what's going on. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Mr. Lunchtime, and this time he's throwing in $10
Man, we
of his
get
lunch
lunch.
money. That's days worth of lunch from
Good
excuse me,
shit.
from Mr. Lunchtime. I was about to do it. It's about to be loud too. But Mr. Lunchtime, thank you very much for that support. He says on 12-5-1994, Ukraine signed the Budapest memorandum. That memorandum word almost threw me for a loop. He said, just a reminder to you, whoa, Mr. Lunchtime,
hey,
Mr. Lunchtime. You said a spicy word, a word that might get Americans very, very feisty. Very feisty. And I must say that I'm scared to read it off.
Whoa,
So,
we
Enforcer,
can't.
what say you?
We can't read that off, but I do thank you for the support, Mr. Lunchtime. Beyond the statement targeted at specific folks, well, I can't even address that at all, actually, because that would just break the politics rule altogether. So sadly, I can't talk about that. But I would say that signing the Budapest Memorandum was a necessary thing for Ukraine. They'd never be able to financially carry the burden of maintaining over 1,000 nuclear weapons. That would just be too much for them. It would have crippled their economy permanently. So they were kind of forced to do it, but at the same time, looking back, I bet a lot of Ukrainians wish they had never joined the Budapest Memorandum. It seems like a bad thing looking back, but when you were there at the time, it was really the only thing the Ukrainians could reasonably do. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you so much once again for support, Mr. Lunchtime, and helping this channel keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, hey, we wouldn't be able to make it possible. And also, Matthew, Butcher777 said, my history teacher was fired for assaulting a student. Oh, buddy, you don't even want to know what happened in our school, man. There was...
When I was in high school, I was actually sitting on the front row of the history class with this very unstable history teacher that I had, just completely unstable, should not have been teaching because they were crazy. And they had a mental breakdown in front of the class for absolutely no reason that I was aware of. Maybe something in their personal life, you know. I can understand you having problems, but don't take it out in the class. And they literally got a mechanical pencil, threw it at the ground. It came over and hit me in the leg. And I remember sitting there thinking, what the hell is wrong with this lady? That was the type history teachers that we had at our school. And it ended up being a little bit of a row there for a minute about throwing the pencil. But I'm telling you, we had some unhinged teachers at our high school. Like, really. There were some good ones, but there were also some unhinged ones.
Man, remember the English teacher that crawled around on the floor?
Oh, yeah, she was nuts. Like, she might be a nice lady, you know, in her personal life, but she was acting nuts when she was teaching at that school.
Oh, man. Let's... I know, like, pulling up dirt on everyone, but... Man, that was wild. Also, dude, you remember that guy in, like, 8th grade middle school that, you know, he was tenderizing the hog in front of the whole class?
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Oh,
yeah, I remember him.
Man, I remember that. Like y'all might think that sounds unbelievable. Nah, actually, people filmed him doing it. Like it was spread around.
Whoa, Jack!
Whoa, Jack! But that's what happened. That's why he got fired. And I don't know how nothing else came of it, but he only got fired. But anyways. Yeah, we had some crazy teachers, Butcher777. Like, that story right there, that would just fall into the rest of them for us. So we'd be like, man, join the club. But anyways, it was a crazy school, crazy place. You know, it was nuts. I mean, we actually had, like, in the later part of high school, we actually had, like, full-on, like, gangs in our school. Like, there were, like, Crips and Bloods and everything, and they were bringing guns to school. There was, like, lockdowns and everything going on all the time. It was crazy. I mean, we grew up in, like it didn't seem that crazy at the time, but whenever we tell these stories to people are like, y'all lived in like a crazy place. It's almost like a war zone. And I was like, well, now that you say that, I mean, you're making me feel kind of bad about it, but yeah, I guess we did. But you know, it was what it was. We didn't get hurt. Nobody, well, not really. A lot of people got hurt. I think some people got shot, but that was outside of high school. But anyways,
some people got hurt.
Man, some people really got hurt, like shot 7 times and run over with a truck hurt. Like, that was one of the stories. And then, you know, the art teacher got slapped by Larry, and then Larry went running into the cornfield and went missing for 2 days as the cops, like, conducted a manhunt for the guy. You know, there was a bunch of crazy stuff. Anyways, a riot in elementary school. No, a riot in elementary school is like a prison riot where y'all, like, setting, like, pillows on fire? Or, like, what was it about? I don't even know what a elementary school would riot for. Like, snacks? Like naps, I don't know. But anyways, with that, I hope that does just that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Butchie777 yet again, who puts in a 10 this time. And thank you very much, Butchie, for the second support of the night. They said, damn. This is a wild one too. Y'all are throwing in some wild ones tonight.
Hey,
I was
how
trying to read
wild?
over this real quick. I was reading and thinking, oh my god, did I copy and paste the right thing into the super chat? But I guess I did. So, Enforcer, are you brave enough to read this off, Jack?
Let's see. Which one is it again? I need to find it.
Butch 777. You know,
Oh.
second one, $10.
Oh my lord. Oh my god. Okay, the first one was readable. This one though. Oh my lord. I'm gonna read some of it. Like, I think I can only read the last sentence, but oh man, I'm telling you, I give her no respect and shoigu and the notable bastable. And beyond that, I cannot read any of that. That is fire, Butchie. I'm not gonna lie. That is a roast. But I think that one roasted so hard it burned. Like I can't even read that. But still, thank you for the support, Butchie777, and helping this thing to keep running. Because it is folks like you who help to make it possible. But if we read that off, we might not be on air for much longer. We might get striked. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. We've gotten more details about the riot in elementary school, and that is a 180-degree turn I did not expect in any direction at all, Matthew. Did you see that twist coming?
Yeah, I mean, these kids must be a little bit more advanced for their age to be getting into all that.
Dude.
Well, aren't they just like 3 or like, how old are you in elementary school?
I
Like
think
5
they're
years
like
old, 6 years old?
7, 8, something like that. Dude, that is one hell of a ride to have at that kind of an age. Like, I don't even know how in the world that would happen. Like when I was that age, I didn't even have a concept of that stuff yet, like at all. Like, honestly, the only concept we got of it was when we were introduced to it in like the middle of middle school by like the actual curriculum. Like, I would have never.
I was in. Yeah, go ahead.
No. You go ahead, please.
I was about to say, all opinion, who's the one talking about it, say it was in Las Vegas.
Dude, that's wild, man. Like, I couldn't even imagine that. And then he said Las Vegas was rough back then. Apparently so. I mean, like, for you to have a riot over that, I'm not even going to say it because I don't know if YouTube would like it or not, but to have a riot over that in elementary school is insane. I can't even believe that. That honestly makes the South seem pretty tame in that regard because that never happened while I was down here. Like, nobody even really cared when we were in school. But anyways, with that,
I think the biggest fight that ever happened in any of the grade school was when they took the ice cream fridge out of the lunchroom in middle school, and they took away the ice cream they sold in the lunchroom. That caused the biggest riot. That's the closest I think the school ever came to a riot.
Dude, and then that's when people started getting pissed, and they brought in the cops with the Tommy guns, and we all sat back down. I remember that. That was something. I think the school we went to was actually a prison, but, you know, I couldn't tell the difference. Anyways, and by the way, when I say that, y'all are like, oh, it couldn't have been that bad. You know, it could have been like a literal prison.
It sucked.
Let me take y'all to a school in Montgomery, because we didn't go to any of these schools, but I'll show you what a normal school looks like in Montgomery. This one actually got shut down a year ago, but it was still running. Oh, man. It's not going to give y'all any interior pictures, but here's the outside of the building. Oh, actually, they made it look too good in that picture.
Yeah, it looks nice there.
This is what it looks like. It looks like a castle. Y'all, there was lead paint on the walls in this thing. When we went there like 5 years ago on a trip to do some event for our school, they had lead paint chips coming off the walls. It was that bad.
And metal detectors at the front door.
Yeah, and also like the wooden floors they had in the school, like the boards were like sticking up out of the floor. Like if you tripped and fell in some places, you were gonna get impaled. It was horrendous. They finally shut this place down, but it was in bad shape. And that was like what a normal school was like in the area. And what was even crazier is that we just eked out in the actual school we went to. We eked out just above them, and they were like, y'all, if y'all want to really see someplace bad, go to Montgomery. And it's like, yeah, we're already where we are right now. I don't think it could get any worse than this. Like, we were almost failing as a school system where we went. But anyways, with that...
I remember there was a guy who had gone to a Montgomery school, like for just a day or something like that. He got transferred to Montgomery from somewhere. I think it was our school or something like that. And I was like, what the hell? He got transferred to Montgomery? And he went to the school, and the first day he got shanked with a shiv. And was seriously messed up, and wasn't even able to go back to the school after that. That's how dangerous it was.
Man, that's messed up, man. They're like, yeah, we're going to transfer you down there for a day. You get shivved. Like, that just sucks. Like, it's like, dude, they put him on an execution, man. Like a school equivalent of an execution. They're like, you have done somewhat mediocre things, we sentenced you to Montgomery. No, not Montgomery. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one. Also, good night, BC Skyman, and stay safe.
And good night to you, BC, and be safe. And also, up next, we have a $10 super chat from Zero J Kwan, who says, Enforcer, have you heard about the new Gulf War front happening in Venezuela? And it seems President Nicholas is taking a page from Putin's book of playbook.
I've heard about it. To be honest with you, though, it's kind of been flying under my radar by a large margin. I haven't really been looking into it much, sadly, but I have heard about it, and it does sound a little unfortunate. A lot of y'all, well, not a lot, some of y'all have actually requested that we cover that as a part of the news. I hate to tell y'all this, but I think we're so far stretched just trying to cover 2 different areas of the world right now. It would be very tough to add in a third, including all of the time before the stream to collect the news. But I will be trying to look into it a little bit so I can speak on it, just a small amount. But still, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 5 and says, this is one for our BC Skyman, helping out in my wife's hometown. Brought the tears to the eyes and warmed the hearts. And thanks again, buddy.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and enjoying this channel. And thank you for giving a huge shout out to BC Skyman. He's doing great work over there in Ukraine right now. He's providing boats, and that's pretty cool to know, to the folks down in Kherson. Hopefully it will be used well, and I bet you it will be. And also, I gotta say, thank you so much for giving a huge shout out to folks all over in the Lee Spring Army, including BC Skyman, because every single one of y'all does amazing things in great ways. I know it sounds like I just suck up to y'all, but I'm not even lying. Like, I hate that because, like, when I say good things about my community, it sounds like I'm sucking up to y'all, like, to just, you know, make y'all feel good. I'm not, because I don't see any other community out there doing the stuff that this community's done ever. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and thank you for being proud of the LSA, because we are also as proud of the LSA as everyone else is. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And this one goes to Still Thinking, who puts in a 5 and says, Enforcer Brothers, keep it up, and take one from the chat. And thank you, Still Thinking, for that support. We appreciate it very much. And of course, we shall grab one from the chat. This one goes to Mark Thompson, who says, why are the trenches lit up so bright in the thermal images?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good explanation. Maybe because, hell, I wouldn't actually have an answer for you, Philip. I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that because I can't even think of a logical answer as to why they look warmer, but they always do. Maybe we can find an answer to that someday. But with that, I hope that tried to address the live chat well, and thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have a 5 from Dark Warrior 137, who says, I found the way to get the same sleep every night. Decided to keep a ruler under my pillow. Why? How else will I be able to tell how long I slept? Hey, man, that's a damn dad joke right there.
Man, that's a good one right there. I like that. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and throwing in the joke. I appreciate it. I'm gonna add that one to my repertoire. And also, I saw someone in the live chat say this, Matty. I gotta answer this live chat, but someone said, doesn't the channel description say global news? To choose is just as bad as mainstream media. But here's the thing. We run this thing as just Matthew and me, and we don't have hundreds of employees, and we're not a multi-million-dollar business that is able to just hire a bunch of people to do whatever. We have a very limited amount of time, and when y'all see this news come on every single night, I've spent hours before the stream even went live compiling all of this news, putting it all together, and trying to figure out what's happening each and every day. If I did that for every corner of the world, the stream would never go live because I would never get done with just doing a single day of news. So while it sounds, while you're saying it sounds bad and it's kind of like mainstream news, we kind of have a better reason for it than mainstream news does because we don't have an unlimited budget of hundreds of millions of dollars. Some, multi-billionaire who bought our, news network and just hires hundreds of people to cover news. We don't have that ability, so we kind of have to limit what we cover. Otherwise, we will be overwhelmed. I will go jump off of a bridge or something, and it will be a terrible deal. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ed once again, who puts in a 5 and says, hello, E-Forcers. Sad Irish Ed again. He's still sad. He says, do you have any idea of how many S-300, 400 systems that the orcs have? 600 plus gone, question mark? They got to be running out. What say you?
I would say they're probably running out. From what we understand, they probably have maybe 100 or 200 left, but it is still enough to keep in Ukraine at the moment. So that's why we're not seeing like a significant loss in the SAM systems that would allow for the Ukrainians to exercise some kind of air superiority. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I gotta thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel possible. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Wapalong Cassidy, who puts in a 5 and says, "You tell him, Enforcer. You tell him."
Thank you so much for support, and I am going to tell him. I'm going to tell them all. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got one from Thomas Jackson. Hey, Thomas Jackson, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, Thomas?
He says, what Ukrainians meant by air superiority when they did concentrate their armor. Russian air assets used standoff weapons to cause heavy losses.
Can you reread that one again?
They said, what Ukrainians meant by air superiority when they did concentrate their armor. Russian air assets used standoff weapons to cause heavy losses.
I thank you for the support. I actually don't remember a time when that happened. So I would have to declare ignorance on that at the moment. Because from what I understood, they didn't really get destroyed a lot in the area of Robotny. It's just that they didn't really dedicate much of their forces there either. Well, much of their modern forces there, at least, either. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Neil Vizanant, who puts in a 5 and says, Chris's mom gets around so much that the CDC had to get involved.
Oh.
And when Russia starts recruiting women, she's too stupid to get in.
Damn.
Damn.
Chris's mom. Chris's mom is got to be the villain of the show now. But still, thank you so much for support and putting in a sick roast. That is sick, my brother. Sick. Still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Wapalong Cassidy, who puts in a 2. It says Taiwan is next.
Well, I mean, it could be. We're hearing about it, and we're keeping an eye on it. I'll promise you that. And it could be next. At least at the moment, it does look like it's probably next, if anything was to happen around the world. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Sign Fine Belli, who says, Reddit/non-credible defense is leaking again.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, did he? Oh, did he? I hate to hear that. I hope, luckily, it's not the War Thunder forums this time, though, because that's usually how the classified stuff gets out. But still, thank you for the support, and I will look into it and see what's happening over there. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, we are fresh out of Super Chat questions.
Yeah.
So, no cap. We are not capping tonight. But what we are not capping about as well is the poll. The question is, if you were a Ukraine soldier and could only choose one type of MRE to eat for months, what would it be? 39% said the beef stew MRE. 25% said the shredded barbecue beef MRE. 21% said beef ravioli MRE, and only 14% said the chili mac MRE.
The legendary chili mac lost?
Well, see, what's weird about that is the Chili Mac MRE is typically the favorite among the armed forces, from what I've been told. So for that to get the lowest, I'm assuming that maybe we had a lot more civilians voting tonight than actual military veterans or active duty. So we might have a skewed sample here that don't know what a Chili Mac tastes like. But for me, honestly, I'd have to go with the shredded barbecue beef one because that sounds better. But I personally haven't had any of them, so I don't know. So I'm kind of guessing like the rest of you. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm getting that damn chili mac. It's like, I heard that it's great. I never had it, but it's got such a good reputation. I have to go with the chili mac. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are actually, believe it or not, almost out of time, y'all. Even going 3 hours, which we've started to try and extend our stream times again since things in law school are kind of coming to a close, at least for the next month. So, sadly, while we have extended the time, we are almost out of time. So, we will only be able to get to 3 live chat questions, and then we're going to be rounding out for the night. And so with that, we are on to the first one.
All right, and the first one goes to Jeff Lieberman, who says, is it true that the Bayraktar is back in action?
We've heard it. We've heard that it never really was out of action. It's just that they started to use them in limited roles because apparently Russian anti-air is actually able to shoot them down a pretty good bit at this point. So we're hearing that they're being used for naval roles, such as recon and other things like that. So yes, it is back in service, but it never really went away. It's kind of like the McRib. It never really goes away. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, you're taking my life said a very true statement, Matt. He said, "I'm a veteran. Chili Mac is okay. No MREs are really good though, and that no truer of a statement has ever been spoken." We have had.
I just like
MREs.
those self-cooking things in the MREs. I like the little hot bag or whatever they give you to heat it up in.
Yeah, I mean, like we've had MREs. We haven't been in the army to eat MREs, but of course, out of curiosity, we've gotten them and eaten them. I've always noticed that they're just never good. Like I've never really liked MREs, and that's why I'm always like way back in the day. Y'all may remember the old guards will when I was always talking about screw MREs. You want good hot cooked food, like real food, because it's so much better for morale and it tastes better, and that always makes people have higher spirits. I've never been that big of a fan of MREs. It's a necessity and a very important thing in a modern war, but still, if you have an option outside of MREs, it's better to get that instead. But with that. Hope that does address that well. You were right on the money, though, with that. I would agree with you. I'm not even a veteran, but I would agree with that entirely. But with that, I think we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, this one goes to Sammy, who says, if Russia attacks Ukraine's power infrastructure this winter, what do you think would be an appropriate response?
I think an appropriate response by the Ukrainians would be... Maybe hit the Kerch Bridge. I wouldn't say for them to do an eye for an eye and knock out the local power grids on the Russian border. That seems to be, just returning a war crime with war crimes, and that's nothing we want to encourage. So maybe hitting the Kerch Bridge instead would probably be a prudent move because it's a vital war asset for the Russians, and not only that, it's a way to get back at them. And so I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and this one goes to Christian Cruz. He says, the question of the night is, if the Congress don't give help to Ukraine, will the U.S. be a credible ally anyways? And should the EU start their own weapons production, costing American jobs?
I don't like the idea of costing American jobs, first off. I think it would be important to support Ukraine and continue that support. But if U.S. support shrivels up, and I'm not saying it will, and I'm not hoping it will, I'm just saying let's hypothetically say it does, Europe is going to have to step up and take the reins. One thing I have to say, though, that is kind of always weird to me, just, telling y'all honestly, and I have to say this really quickly, I want all of our international viewers that aren't from the United States to know, I do not have beef with your countries. I like all of your countries. They're all interesting, unique, they have very cool cultures. But one thing that always annoys me a little bit in our war reporting world is that a lot of the international war analysts always sit there and crap on U.S. support, and they're always like, it's not a pissing contest, or, Europe does its own thing, we're still doing equally good. And then when America says that they're not, possibly not going to be providing support anymore, then everyone wants to throw the blame onto America. And it's like, well, I thought they weren't even that big of a deal, and it wasn't a pissing contest, so why is it a big deal if they pull out? And the case is that that's not true. That's just cope, and, it's just ridiculous to say something like that. But in reality, it would be terrible if the U.S. did pull out. We provide most of the military support. The Europeans would have to step up if they found the strategic concerns to be exceptional enough, which they are, and it's totally different than the United States. Weapons acquisitions in Europe are a totally different animal. Like in America, when we need more shells, we put out a bidding. It's pretty much an auction, and we give out the contract to the lowest bidder. They then produce the shells. It's that easy. In a place like Germany, it's not that easy. If the Germans want more shells, they have to put out a contract for more shells. They then give it to the lowest bidder. But if all of the other companies lose because they weren't the lowest bidder, y'all know what they can do? Like, do you know what they can do, Matthew?
Not really.
The weapons companies can sue the German government for not picking their contract or their bid, even if it wasn't the lowest. And what happens is that no shells are produced because until the lawsuit is ended, nobody can fulfill the contract or go through with fulfilling it. So they have to wait for the court case to end before anyone can actually fulfill the contract. So then it may take years to fulfill a simple contract. And it's like that in many European countries. So even if they wanted to support Ukraine, it's going to be a lot more difficult on the European side of things than it is on the American side of things. And that may even be the reason why a lot of European countries haven't given as much support as America, even per capita, because they just simply can't, because there may be lawsuits holding up some of it. Acquisitions is a nightmare. That may be an issue as well. But I would say the Europeans would have to step up, because if America falls to the wayside, it's only going to be Europe. But that is a worst case scenario. Everyone needs to be writing their congressional representatives and telling them that supporting Ukraine is very important, not just for American jobs, not just for the American economy. It's also important for U.S. strategic concerns, and also important for European and American economic concerns as well. It's a win-win all around to support Ukraine. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank y'all all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure. If y'all have enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to share this with your friends, because we greatly appreciate knowing that folks find the Lee Spring Army to be one of the greatest pro-Ukrainian communities on YouTube. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, I saw someone take a great offense before we leave to what I was saying about weapons acquisitions. Let's see. People are always talking crap about how Americans sue each other. Yeah, but that's not in the defense sphere. You can't, like, take a blanket statement about, like, civil lawsuits and then apply that to, the defense sector. That's not how that works. And there's also usually binding agreements and everything there. That's a totally different animal. So, you just can't take Billy suing someone for assault and then say that also applies to Raytheon and the U.S. government. That just doesn't apply. I
like lawsuits.
Yeah, I personally like lawsuits. I'm kind of going into a business where lawsuits are the bread and butter, but at the same point, you don't really see a lot of lawsuits coming out of the defense contracting sphere because they aren't really encouraged by the U.S. government, and there isn't really a lot of agreements with the U.S. government that allows for that kind of stuff. But anyway, and I just have to say, you've been around for so long. Why did you have to come in and be so vehemently violent about it? I'm not vehemently violent about anything like that. And we generally try and have people respect each other, except for Chris's mom. That's really the only person we disrespect on here. But with that, that is the end of the show. I thank you all once again, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini! Long live the Lee Spring Army. God bless America. And of course, good luck to the homesteaders, and good night.
All right, good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow. Get some rest. Thank you all for another great stream. And of course, get your biggie bag and LSA. Slava Ukraine. Good night. And see you tomorrow.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Кану